So we're going to call this meeting back to order. We'll open our regular session. Mr. Matsuoka, will you leave us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please rise. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Buenas noches, tenemos interpretación disponible al español si alguien necesita.
Thank you. Headsets for the hearing impaired are available. Please indicate if you need a headset. There's no reportable action from the closed session, and we will move to the superintendent's report.
2 comments about tonight. Last board meeting, we introduced Cammie Barnwell as our new PIO. She's sitting way in the back, and she has a big smile on her face because she sat in this boardroom for many, many years when she worked for the News Press, and she got to know Santa Barbara Unified and really our entire school community very, very well. And she dreamed about this job, and she commented last board meeting. So we're really privileged to have Ms. Barnwell serve as our PIO, and we look forward to many articles and stories being written about Santa Barbara Unified. So thank you, Cammie. The second announcement I wanted to share is a lot of our management staff took part in a safety coordination gathering. It was organized by our own safety coordinator, Kelly Moore, and there was representatives from sheriffs, Santa Barbara PD, fire, county, almost every public agency, and helping us get on the same page when it comes to safety and drills and protocols. It was fantastic to have a chance to dialogue with our counterparts in public safety. So once again, I think the benefits of that position are paying off over time. And it's a real gift to have Kelly Moore in that role because he knows both. Well, he doesn't know our side very well. He's getting to know education, but he really knows public safety. So it's just a pleasure to have him serving our district. And I think the board knows this, we are starting to share him out to other districts in the county because of his expertise. So it was a good day today.
Thank you. So are there any board comments and or correspondence you'd like to share, board members? Ms. Ford?
Thank you so much. Just a few things. I was lucky enough to attend the County Board Executive Committee on up in Buellton on June 20th, and we talked about concerns and issues that are all boards are experiencing across our county, and I thought I would just highlight that there continues to be a concern about serving our special education students, about charter school oversight and recent legislation, and also about the possible lack of understanding of ed code changes and what restorative practices and approaches truly are. And so I'll be inviting all of you guys to some of the speakers that will be scheduled in the coming year for that. I also wanted to mention that I'm the liaison to Santa Barbara Charter School, and I'm so proud of the way that the school is moving forward after the loss of a beloved teacher and healing, and has had many memorials and some great ways to remember the teacher. And also, at the urging of Dr. Reed and others, I took a tour of the Hidden Valley property given by naturalists and also a representative of Santa Barbara City Creeks Restoration, and I just learned so much. I felt like I had kind of like I'd been on safari or something. We saw lots of flora and fauna, and it was just amazing to think about the potential for the way that we think about the use of that property. And I urge the rest of the board also to take a tour with these folks. At least one is here tonight, Anne, and Lewis, and so that's great.
And Dan.
Where's Dan? Oh, hello, Dan. Anyway, these guys know so much. Anybody would benefit from going on any kind of a hike with them. That's it for me. Thanks.
Okay. Additional board? Ms. Capps?
Yeah, again, today, Ms. Ford and I went to one of the free summer meal sites that our district is providing the amazing food for. It was at Bonnet Park, and they're happening every day through August, and it's just one of the many resources that this district provides. There's 52 places around the county where any child 18 and under can get a free meal. And it's just such an important service. It's a time when hunger spikes in our community, and we already know that 1 in 5 kids are food insecure, so they actually really need this food. So it was great to be there, and anyone can go. It's really easy to just stop in and say hi to the kids and have some food. Thanks.
Dr. Reed?
Yeah, I just wanted to also add, just to add on to what Kate Ford said about the area, the Hidden Valley area, because when I went there, it really was wonderful just to be there in peace, of just standing there and seeing the wildlife, and there's so many opportunities to really see what the wildlife is and explore without having to do any sort of, anything. You can just stand there and see what it is, and there's so many opportunities for learning experiences. So I do also urge the board to go check it out, and also it'll just bring a little serenity into your life as well.
Ms. Munoz?
Yes, I am looking forward to, and I appreciated the email about touring the Hidden Valley property. I'll be calling to schedule that. And certainly this past weekend, being board participant with the Solstice Parade, happy solstice to everyone. It was nice to see the community and all the, children and parents and people of all ages enjoying that.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to public comments. Ms. Capps?
Great, we have quite a few here tonight. So just as a reminder, each person has 3 minutes. I will be giving a gentle 30-second warning, and I'll call 3 in advance so you can kind of get ready and make your way up to the podium when the person before you finishes. So first is Melissa Lowenstein, followed by Perla Sandoval, followed by Marla McNally Phillips. Thanks.
Thank you. And good evening, Superintendent Matsuoka and board members. At the last board meeting, Ms. Wagenek shared the outcomes of research the district completed on AHA Peace Builders high school programming. And based on the variables they chose to measure, a choice was made to move funding from high school Peace Builders over to educator training, as the district is investing a lot in supporting teachers and staff with social emotional competencies that will make their jobs easier and more rewarding and help them build better campus cultures. And in the aftermath, some information that appeared in the press led a lot of supporters, alumni, and friends of AHA to reach out to us, worried by a narrative that seemed to suggest our work in the district was being eliminated. So I'm here today with our new executive director, Pilar Montoya, some members of our board, and several students and alumni and staff. And the students here have been in our programs, and several are also alumni staff. And they want to help the school board and broader community understand that not only are we not being dropped from schools, our programming across the district is more robust than it's ever been. In 2019 to 20, AHA is partnering with the district to do educator trainings, AHA Peace Builder programs at 2 high schools and 4 junior high schools. We fundraise to cover costs for those. We continue to offer by donation after-school programming for district youth 5 days a week, summer programming lasting 5 weeks, including a camping trip that a bunch of AHA students are on right now. And a lot of the youth that came into that summer program came through junior high Peace Builders, and we were packed to the gunnels. We had wait lists for some of our groups this summer. It's wonderful. We also have parent groups 6 times a year and a by donation counseling clinic serving AHA teens and families. And we come in gratitude and a spirit of collaboration, just to sort of clear the air and make sure that the board and the public know what we're really up to this year. And if I could leave you with 4 things about AHA, it'd be these. We serve over 1,000 youth per year, having served a total of over 22,000 youth educators and families since we started. And we will be training over 400 area educators and school staff this year. We will be serving at least 120 youth in Peace Builder programs at Santa Barbara, DP, and the 4 junior highs, and we'll serve at least 150 youth in our 5-day-a-week after-school and summer programs. Thank you for working with us to promote the well-being of students and families in the district, and we know you'll enjoy hearing from some of these amazing teens tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, Perla Sandoval, again, followed by Marla Phillips.
Hi, my name is Perla Sandoval. I was part of the AHA program since I was in 8th grade, and now I'm a 3rd year at Santa Barbara City College. And my total time in AHA has been 5 years as a participant, and then I'm starting my 3rd year as an alumni facilitator. It's important to just know that the Peace Builder program was designed to help teens my age, obviously. I did it for the 4 years I did at Santa Barbara High School. It gave me the skills that I needed to be standing here in a board meeting full of adults, which is a little intimidating, but here I am doing it. It gave me the skills to work along these amazing people who treat me like an adult, because I am just 20 years old and I feel like a baby. I feel like it's important to have something so inclusive like the AHA Peace Builders program in such a big school like Santa Barbara High School, because it gives us the space to connect with different backgrounds. I mean, I went to Franklin Elementary School, and we have people coming from Montecito Union who, of course, have different backgrounds that we never get to really talk to. It started when I was in junior high. It went from an hour and a half to only 45 minutes, but the facilitators when I was there made it seem like we were there for an hour, making sure we all knew each other. They kept us fed, which always is a perk. Fun games and just skills that I needed to be an adult. I mean, I'm juggling 2 jobs right now, and I'm at City College full time, and it's just something that I'm so proud to say that I'm an AHA alumni and that I'm part of the staff, and I continue to hopefully inspire people. And just thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Perla, you just inspired me. Good evening. Thank you so much for having so many of our AHA supporters here this evening. We're thrilled to be able to speak to you on behalf of something that's so important to all of us in this room. Well, you guys will all be in with us in a minute. Just hang on. I'm the president of the board. I'm Marla McNally Phillips. I'm the president of the AHA board, and so happy to be so. We have a number of board members here and a couple of new board members. And I think that we are best represented, which is why we put them right here in the front row, by the youth that we serve. You heard how many youth we serve. And I can tell you I've been through almost every program that AHA gives this community. I wish we could invite you all down to be and come into one of our programs, hearing you speak about where you went today and seeing your faces light up. I mean, that's the magic of what AHA does. I mean, who we are is right here in the front row. The magic of what we do is live. And I wish you could be there with us, and I invite you all to participate when you can. We are in our 20th year. Dr. Jennifer Freed and Randy Friedman started AHA 20 years ago. And this is our model community. When I'm reading your mission statement, you know, I'm thinking of our mission statement. It's exactly what we do, who we believe in. We believe in the same youth you do, and to empower them to reach their full potential. And so in doing so, I am proud to read, because again, I think it's the teens and the youth we serve are our best advocates. So I'm going to read a statement by Sarah Block, who couldn't be here. She's almost 19 years old. She participated in the San Marcos Peace Builders all 4 years of high school and was in Peace Builder leadership for her last 2 years. Peace Builders provided me the unique opportunity to connect with people who were different from me. In most areas of my high school life, I chose to stay inside my comfort zone and only associate myself with those who seemed most similar to me. I need something like Peace Builders to nudge me outside of that comfort zone. Through connecting and playing with a wide spectrum of people who are racially, sexually, and socioeconomically different from me, I get to experience how similar we all really are. Peace Builders allows teens like myself to dive deeper into what makes us unique in our communities, but also what we all share, so we can grow closer to one another and forge a more peaceful future. As Melissa so perfectly put it, we can't thank you enough for being open to hearing how important we all feel AHA is to our community. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome Gloria Sandoval, followed by Roxy Petty, followed by Jose Ibarra.
My name is Gloria Sandoval. I am 14 years old, and I am an upcoming sophomore in Santa Barbara High School. I've been in AHA, now going into my 3rd year, and personally the way AHA affected me was very helpful with my self-esteem, coming out of my shell, and especially with my anxiety. It taught me so many ways to deal with meeting new people, building a connection, but those are different, which you've heard before, and giving me giving me ways to deal with my anxiety when I'm not feeling safe in a place. I was introduced to it by my older sister, and I'm so glad she did, because it made me meet new people and just helped me in so many ways I can't describe it like the top of my head. It was just great having this program and perhaps even calling them my new family or just a second family, and helping me with relationships and skills I might need when I'm an adult. And I'm just so glad. And I'm just very happy that I know that they're always there for me and support me and just have my back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Roxy Peck.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Roxy Petty. I'm the Associate Director of AHA. I also have 4 children in the school district. I have a senior that's going to be graduating from San Marcos High School that's out on our camping trip right now. I have a son who is going to go into his sophomore year at Dos Pueblos High School, Isaiah, which is here today. And I have 2 younger ones that are moving in that direction. So it's my privilege to be able to be a part of AHA and to really see how we impact our youth. And I am going to be reading something from Stephanie Martinez, who just graduated from Santa Barbara High School and wasn't able to be here today. So here it goes. My name is Stephanie Martinez, and I am an alumni participant of AHA Peace Builders. Peace Builders has taught me many skills that have helped me in life. For example, being able to step out of my comfort zone from time to time and being able to socially interact with new people. It has also made me more comfortable in public speaking, and even though I know that there are still ways I can improve with that skill, it opened my eyes to many ways we can help give back to our community, such as picking up trash at the beach or anywhere I see it, helping out the Unity Shop and other ways of service. Most importantly, it gave me, a person who's dealing with 2 mental disorders and has dealt with many obstacles, a safe place to come forward and face challenges, instead of hiding and pretending everything is okay. That is why I am proud to say that I'm an AHA Peace Builder. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Jose Ibarra, followed by Rand Rosenberg.
Hi, my name is Jose Ibarra. I'm 19 years old. I graduated from Santa Barbara High School last year, and I just finished my first year at Santa Barbara City College. I did AHA for 5 years, starting my 8th grade, going through my senior year. When I was in the 8th grade, I was a very quiet kid. I didn't have many friends. I sat at the back of the classroom, and I didn't really communicate with any of my teachers. Thanks to the social and emotional intelligence and the leadership skills that I gained from the AHA Peace Builders, I went from that, and by the time I was in my senior year, I made many friends and mentors who I will carry with me throughout my life. I was nominated for a Youth Impact Award, a Youth Leadership Award. And I was also working with teachers on campus with peer mediation in classrooms with disruptions and conflicts. Without the work I did in AHA Peace Builders, I don't think I would have been able to accomplish any of that, and I can't imagine where I would be now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rand Rosenberg. I'm a board member of AHA. Usually when I join an organization in that kind of capacity, I really want to understand what it's about, not just from reading or talking to people, but actually experiencing things like that. So instead of joining the board of AHA initially, I decided that I would really prefer going into the schools and actually being part of the program. So I ended up going on the staff of AHA. I was at San Marcos High School for a couple of quarters in the programs, including Peace Builders, so I could see firsthand just how this program worked, because I was about ready to invest a lot of my time in the organization, and I just wanted to be very confident that it was the right thing. And I personally had a life-transforming experience by being a part of what AHA is all about. And that life-transforming experience arose because I got to sit with kids and talk about issues that were so important, never more important than they are today. And over a period of time, I got to watch these kids grow and grow in terms of self-confidence, grow in terms of being able to really speak up for themselves and to share things. And it was really such a moving, one of the most moving experiences I've had. So I am a huge supporter of the organization. I'm a huge supporter of Peace Builders because I've seen it, I've experienced it, I've lived it with all these kids. I just wanted to add that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So next speaker is Isaiah Petty, followed by Molly Green, followed by Jenna Tico. Welcome, Isaiah.
Hi, my name is Isaiah Petty. I am going in 10th grade at DP. And I started AHA about 3 years ago in La Colina, 7th grade. And before it, I was really introverted and I really didn't know how to express my feelings. So I would usually just keep it all in. And it really hurt me. I didn't really show it, but it, like looking back at it, it just ruined me. And when I first joined, I was really shy. I didn't know how to really talk in public areas. And it really taught me those skills perfectly because I wouldn't be doing this in front of you if I didn't. And it just really taught me how to be an adult and like coming up to be an adult. And I really think that the skills that they're teaching is going to help us later in life. And that just showed me to like spread it on to more of my friends and getting them in so they can experience AHA and to pass the gift of AHA. Thank you.
Thank you. Molly Green.
Good evening, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It's an honor to share a piece that was written by one of our alumni and who isn't able to be here tonight. My name is Talia Sanchez, and I'm about to start my 4th year at UNC Chapel Hill, pursuing a double major in communications and public policy. AHA first came to my school when I was a first-year high school student at Santa Barbara High School, and I couldn't in a million years have imagined how it would have shaped my life and the person I am today. With the mentorship of so many educators through AHA's Peace Building program, I was able to grow as a person, building my confidence, my public speaking abilities, and most importantly, my awareness of the importance of social emotional learning and the value that this can bring to a school district. Through this program, I was able to watch my own high school campus transform, and it started with the Peace Builders. Peace Builders brought together a group of diverse students coming from different backgrounds with different interests who all wanted to see a more inclusive campus. Those connections extended outside of the school halls, and through this program, I have made long-lasting relationships with friends and mentors that I cherish very deeply. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jenna Tico.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Jenna Tico. I am a facilitator with AHA. I'm also the grant writer with AHA. And I'm a 4th generation Santa Barbara High School alum. And I just want to say how special it's been working for AHA to share with my cousins and my aunts and uncles, my dad, my grandma, about the impact I see it having on the school that they know really well, and to share with them what it can feel like to be a student at Santa Barbara High through the lens of AHA. And I also have the honor of sharing a testimonial from one of our alum who's a beloved alumni facilitator now. His name is Miguel. AHA. This one acronym has taught me so much from 8th grade up until the end of senior year. I was such an introverted kid with so much hidden potential that I didn't even know back then the things I was capable of. From being able to socialize and communicate better with my peers to being able to conquer one of my biggest fears, singing in front of hundreds of people. If I have learned one thing all throughout these years, it's that we grow as an individual without even knowing it. I've grown mentally, suffering from anxiety, finding coping mechanisms that actually work, and being able to freely express myself creatively. I used to suppress my emotions all the time because it was how I was raised due to a toxic father figure. But AHA had allowed me to set a new bar for myself and taught me the benefits of living life the way I want to. It's an amazing program that has the potential to bring the best out of everyone. I can truly say I'm glad AHA is a part of my life. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome Sheridan Rosenberg, followed by Audrey Nafziger, followed by Jill Rivera.
Thank you. My name is Sheridan Rosenberg. I just want to make a quick comment. My daughter attended Santa Barbara Charter School for 6 years, and it was the very best experience of her life. It was such an extraordinary environment. So I just wanted to make that comment, and congratulations. While the district has apparently decided to discontinue the contract for Peace Builders part of AHA contract and program, I have serious concerns with the district's continuing contract and involvement with AHA and its founder, Jennifer Freed. I have heard from prior students, including my daughter and all of her friends, that the district essentially turned over its health education classrooms to AHA for each health class 1 day a week of 6 weeks while they were freshmen in high school, and allowed AHA to present its own curriculum, which included exercises such as Roses and Thorns, love languages. This curriculum involves students being unwillingly forced to share deeply personal stories and feelings to their fellow classmates and the AHA instructor. According to my daughter and her friends, the classes were extremely uncomfortable, embarrassing, and even inappropriate. That's their point of view, and I think they need a voice. Additionally, the AHA CEO and founder, Jennifer Freed, publicly engaged in behavior and conversations that are totally inappropriate for students. For example, on her public Facebook page dated June 14th, Jennifer posted being on a show called Sex with Emily, wherein she discussed such things as sexual wisdom for teenagers, and posed in an accompanying photograph with a big purple sex toy. This photograph is available to the public, including all students who are welcome to visit her Facebook page. The Sex with Emily show is strictly adult-oriented programming, which is apparently being promoted on that Facebook post. This is not the type of our organization that the district should be turning over its classrooms to its freshman health classes, or any class for that matter, particularly when there are highly qualified district teachers that are already on staff to do the teaching. Furthermore, organizations like Girls Inc. and Boys and Girls Club are self-sustaining after-school programs off campus that people can choose to participate in. Please let parents and students decide. In light of the mad mess, I would urge the board to review Jennifer's Facebook page and ask themselves whether they would want to continue
30 seconds.
Their own children to be exposed to this in school. Furthermore, the district should cease bringing in these unsupervised, unvetted nonprofits onto the district campuses and allowing them unfettered access to students, teachers, and staff. More importantly, the district should stop bucketing money to these nonprofits or any nonprofit. Please take this opportunity to make a clean break. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Audrey Nafziger, followed by Jill Rivera, followed by our final speaker, Ann Burdett.
Good evening, board. My name is Audrey Nafziger. I'm a parent of 2 school-age daughters, children in the district. I'm a 25-year career sex crime prosecutor at the Ventura County District Attorney's Office. I've been a Santa Barbara community member through all those years. And my kids have been in schools here, including the charter school, which was a wonderful experience. I come to you because I couldn't make the last 2 meetings, and I'm concerned as a parent and someone who's in the business of prosecuting people who abuse children I'm concerned about what happened with the Matt Academy and the various issues that were exposed. And going forward, I'd like to know what the plan is to be told to the public how to fix this problem so it never happens again. Because we haven't heard anything. The police are going to do their job. But what is the plan for the district, from the top administrator all the way down, to deal with teachers who don't turn in people who are preying upon our children? What is the plan? This was a really good example of a failure. And I don't know what your plan is. So I'm here tonight to ask you to get together and to tell us how you're going to avoid this from happening again. It's really important. The safety of our children is the number one thing. So I'm challenging you to get a group together and figure this out, and then to be transparent and let us know. Because right now, there doesn't appear to be a plan at all. And that was a colossal failure. And it shouldn't happen again, and it doesn't have to. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill Rivera.
Good evening. Oh, here we go. As parents, we expect that organizations that the Santa Barbara Unified School District contracts with, namely nonprofits, will be properly vetted and will be held to a code of conduct that aligns with district standards. I mentioned this last time I spoke because when we're hiring nonprofits, you know, we as parents and stakeholders, we would like to have the assurance that who's ever interacting with our children, whether it's a district employee or someone that the district has contracted with, is held to the same high standard of behavior as all the teachers and staff would be at school. So in light of the recent dismissal of Pablo Sweeney and Dan Williams, as parents and stakeholders, many of us are concerned about what appears to be a lack of vetting and oversight and accountability of the people working for the nonprofits that are hired by the district. The district and this board, we contract with a lot of nonprofits here. And, you know, as adults working with kids, it's a responsibility to be held to a high standard of behavior and character. I work in the business world, and every year I have to go through compliance training that includes code of conduct. And that includes how I use my social media, you know, just how I conduct myself. And maybe this is a suggestion that we have this top down for anyone working with the district, that there's a code of conduct that everyone should adhere to. And it should be enforced. I have to take the training every single year. So it's something that is routinely enforced because they're representing the district when they're on campus. And there's a sacred trust that comes with that when you're working with minor children. So, thank you.
Thank you. And again, our final speaker is Ann Burdett.
Good evening, Superintendent Matsuoka and board members. My name is Ann Burdett, and I am a board member of the Santa Barbara Urban Creeks Council, and I am also a 2019 high school graduate and will be attending UCSB's Environmental Studies program in the fall. I would like to follow up on my previous presentation to the board and the letter that I sent you yesterday regarding the Hidden Valley Farms project. Thank you to board members Ford and Reed for each joining us for a site visit. Thank you to Vice President Capps for your previous 2 visits to the site and for considering my perspective in my letter. And Board Member Munoz, I just heard that you're planning on visiting the site with us, and that's great, and I hope that you'll get as much out of it as the other board members who have. And President Sims Moten, the Urban Creeks Council would like to again extend the invitation to you to also tour the site with us so that you can see firsthand the incredible educational opportunities that it offers in its natural state and the ways that agriculture and development would negatively impact it. I would now like to distribute copies of Urban Creeks Council's latest newsletter to the board members and superintendent. And we have articles in here about many issues that we're working on, but mainly please see the article on the front page for more information on our possible alternative for the Hidden Valley site. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And that concludes public comment. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So next we'll move to item D, the acceptance of donations. Do I hear a motion?
Sure. I move to accept with gratitude the donations.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. So next we're moving to the consent agenda. Are there any items with fellow board members would like to pull for discussion? Dr. Reed?
Item 14.
Okay. Other items that would like to be pulled? No? Okay. So we normally can we can discuss it if it's going to be a short question or.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Becchio, who's on vacation. He actually called in from vacation.
Your mic's not on.
Oh.
Or you're not speaking into it. Yeah,
It's
you go.
on. Can you hear it? Hello? Okay. So I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Becchio about this. I pulled item 14. Can people hear? Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Testing, testing. Okay, so I'll start over. So I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Becchio, who's on vacation. I just want you to know that someone on vacation actually called me back within like 45 minutes of an email. So I want to acknowledge that, first of all. It was more than he should have done. But I actually just wanted to ask a question because there has been a hiring of 2 co-directors for the MAD Academy. And I had asked just for clarification, because I understood we had a TOSA position, a 1 FTE position for the TOSA. And so it was split into a co-director leadership. And so Dr. Becchio, maybe you can, Sean, you can add to that. But it sounds to me like the intent was because the teachers who are working within the academy, the idea was to have a teacher who was involved with the academy be a part of the leadership team, and that it made sense to have 2 teachers who are actively involved work simultaneously and together as like co-chairs or directors of the MAD Academy. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and maybe you could just speak. That seems that is that a way the district is kind of moving in some directions in terms of perhaps splitting a TOSA position as a teacher and a leadership role? I'm just curious, is that something that's a new trend, perhaps?
Thank you for the question. No, to put it bluntly. And I want to clarify a few things just in terms of terminology and constructs. So when we talk about academy directors, even though we have that word director in there, they're not management positions. They are effectively TOSA positions. So what is more typical of our larger academies, which have multiple hundreds of students enrolled, is there might be a director, but sometimes there are even more administrative duties or different kinds of administrative duties that may also be assigned to another teacher. It's true for VADA. Both MAD and VADA are partnership academies, and there's certain reporting requirements to the state that may or may not be done by the primary director. Just that's an example of some additional administrative duties that might be given to another teacher on special assignment with maybe less release time. So the reason for the split at MAD is really multifaceted. It has to do with just the juncture that MAD finds itself in terms of its programming and its design and things that are being explored for future design. It also has to do, actually, in this case, specifically to MAD and Santa Barbara High School, with the number of dual enrollment courses that a teacher can serve as an instructor for, depending on whether they're instructor for CC or instructor for SB Unified. So things that are, that don't readily meet the eye. So it's kind of a unique thing. It's not. It's a good question because it allows me to kind of clarify that point about folks that we refer to as directors actually technically being teachers on special assignment as a job classification, and also the fact that this is a unique construct for MAD.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Ford, was there one you wanted to pull, or you get ready to make a motion? There you go. Just wanted to make sure we were completed that item. All right, I'll accept
Moving right
that motion.
along, I
All
make
right.
a motion to accept the consent items on the agenda.
I second that.
Yes, ma'am. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, consent agenda. So that moves us to our action agenda. Make sure, oh, no, I'm sorry, we have a public hearing on Every Student Succeeds Act, the federal addendum to the Local Control and Accountability Plan, LCAP. Public hearing, Ms. Carey and Dr. Ramirez.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Dr. Sims-Moten, Board. Did you want to? This would be a public hearing as per statute. This is as the name implies, an addendum that provides additional information relative to federal funding and how it complements and supports efforts relative to our LCAP, which you'll see a little bit later in our action agenda. But since this is a public hearing, just wanted to frame the conversation in that regard.
I don't see any requests to speak on this item. Are there any on this item? So this would be F1.
I wasn't sure if this was for this or later, but.
Yeah, we have a request for the LCAP. Is that for later?
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Great.
Thank you. Any questions from the board regarding this item? Okay. So noted. So I guess we can close this part of the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we will move to the action item G1. Ms. Jate, adoption of Resolution 2018-19-64, the Education Protection Act, and approval of the spending plan for the state EPA funds to be received in fiscal year 2019-20.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to turn this over to the Director of Fiscal, Lacey Preston.
Good evening, board members, superintendent, and cabinet. Proposition 55 was approved by the voters of California on November 8th, 2016, and continues the funding of the Education Protection Account through December 2030. Part of the provisions of this proposition is that we do the following items. The spending plan must be approved by the governing board during a public meeting. EPA funds cannot be used for salaries and benefits of administrators or any other administrative costs. And each year, the local agency, must publish on its website an accounting of how much money was received from the Education Protection Account, EPA, and how the funds were expended. So this right here before you is the web posting that we will be putting up tomorrow after the board meeting. And it shows you for the year 17-18 how much we spent on EPA funds, or how much we spent out of the Education Protection Account, and that we spent all of that money on instructional salaries. And the next column over is 18-19. This is what we're estimating to spend. And then the final column is 19-20, and this is our plan, and we're planning to spend all the money on instructional salaries. So now I would like to ask the board to adopt Resolution 2018-19-64 and the spending plan for the State Education Protection Account for funds to be received in fiscal year 1920.
Can I just have a question before? Can you just explain a little bit for the public what Education Protection Account is exactly?
So it's basically kind of an account that the state has set aside. So every year, based on, it was originally Proposition 30, now it's Proposition 55, the state now sets aside money into the account that then we receive to spend according to what the proposition states.
Okay, so can you give me a little bit more on that, just in terms of, because you're saying instructional, so what activities are instruction activities? We can expand on that a little bit.
This money is part of the LCAP.
Okay.
I mean, the LCFF funding. It's all part of a big bucket, and so we take some of the money and put it into this bucket and put towards instructional salaries.
It all goes to instructional salaries.
Great, thank you. Just trying to make that clarification of where that is. So any additional questions or comments from the board? I move that we adopt Resolution 2018-19-64, the Education Protection Act, and approval of the spending plan for the state funds to receive in fiscal year 2019-20.
I second it.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we'll move to G2, renewal of the Adelante Charter School Petition, Memorandum of Understanding and Facility Use Agreement. Ms. Chate.
Thank you very much. Once again, we're here to, we have been looking at the petition for Adelante. We've also included the facility use agreement and the memorandum of understanding. And where I see that we do have some people from Adelante here. But basically what we're here is to pass a resolution approving the petition and then approving the FUA and the MOU for Adelante for a 5-year period from 2019 to 2024.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Ms. Ford.
Thanks. Mr. Shea, in the narrative we were given, there was some reference to administrative review of different parts of the charter. And so I was wondering if you could just describe what the process was for having, I'm assuming, cabinet members sort of look at different aspects of the charter itself, and how it was all comprehensively put together.
Sure. So what we do is we divide it out. So I get all the finance, and you don't want me looking at instruction. So we farm that out. We look at the special ed part of it. Fran will look at that in the pupil services, and then the educational part goes to Raul, and then Mr. Matsuoka also reviews it. We also ran it through our attorneys, and they made some suggestions and helped Adelante move some bylaws forward with all the new rules for charters that have come across. So we got all in alignment on that, which was really beneficial for both sides of the equation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Capps.
Yeah, hopefully you can unpack this a little bit. Does this detail the new changes of the facilities that has been in discussion?
No, they don't. Since that hadn't been an agreement, we will document that later in an MOU, and maybe Mr. Matsuoka can speak to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was my original intent to get that included with this agenda item, but I pulled up a spreadsheet, and it had been a while since we had walked it through room by room. So we have a meeting on the calendar mid-July to just do one final pass through the future agreements, and then we'll bring that to the board for your approval.
But can I just ask on sequencing, how come why are we approving this part now and without that sort of settled yet?
Well, there's way more in that facility use agreement than just what the future looks like at Adelante. So to keep moving on, and this will take some time with this, the other agreement with DSA projects, building projects and stuff. So we need to operate on a facility use agreement prior to that, because there's way more in there than just that part of it.
So is this just, is there a deadline for this by June 30th or something to that
Well,
effect?
we should be working on we should have our MOU and our facility use agreement ready to start on July 1.
Okay, and so then at a future time, the future of where Adelante actually sits will be added to this charter agreement?
Well, when that time comes.
Sure.
I actually see it being a modified facility use agreement.
Okay.
That would be informed by the plan that you'll see July 23rd.
Great.
Ms. Ford.
Actually, any change in address will require a material revision of the charter. So, which is easy to do if the board is in favor of it, but even the address, changes in enrollment, anything. there has to be a material revision. So,
I
just
don't,
something for us to
is there, I don't think there's going to be a change in address because the school pretty much is staying in the
Change
same
in
spot.
enrollment?
We put in a very modest increase in the enrollment cap.
Their current enrollment is 290, and we got them to 308 by 2022, I believe, or 3. So that's about what that campus can hold.
Thank you. I mean, I just, again, just was trying to look for that in a lot of this language, and I didn't see it, and so I just wanted to make sure that, I don't know if it needs to be reflected that this is coming up, but I have every assurance that it will, and it seems like a really good, productive process, but I didn't want this to be approved without some acknowledgement of major changes that are on the horizon. Good changes.
Yeah, well, I see Dr. Batista sitting in the audience. I see board members. I mean, we've been on a 9-month process, so, I mean, know that that will come before you in 4 weeks.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion?
I will make the motion for the renewal of Adelante Charter School petition, Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, and Facility Use Agreement, FUA.
My second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Could you do the resolution? Could you do also the resolution? The resolution 2018, or it should be 2018-19-65. That's a resolution to actually pass the petition.
I'm
to
not
approve
seeing
the
that here.
petition.
It's not here,
It's
but
not
so
here.
moved.
Well, wait, it's not
I
here,
mean,
right?
it's not listed on our agenda.
Yeah.
It's the very first agenda approval, the resolution. I'm looking at the board, the documents.
Oh,
There it is, right there.
Yeah,
That's
the
not
confusion
here.
is just not listed in the
Right.
board agenda list.
Right.
So why don't we redo the motion
Yes.
to approve the resolution, and you can read the number off the screen.
so I so move the resolution number 2018/1945, Board of Education, Santa Barbara Unified School District, approving the renewal of the charter petition for Adelante Charter School.
Is that 1965? That's
19-65. Sorry,
That's 65.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry that wasn't in
Yeah,
there.
Okay. So, with the new and amended motion to include the resolution. Do I hear a second? Okay. Ms. Ward, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So now we'll move to. Okay. So this is next to G3, adoption of Santa Barbara Unified School District 2019-20 fiscal year budget. Mr. Tay and Ms. Lacey are probably going to be discussing. Okay.
Thank you, board members. So 2019-20.
Wow.
I know, can you believe it? Just in a few days. I want to point out our cover today because this is a mural that you may recognize on the Quetzal facilities out on La Colina campus. I apologize for the cutting off of the L, but that is Quetzal. But the kids did this, and I thought it was pretty fun, so we added that to our our adopted budget. So as you know, we have to have this board approved by June 30th of 2019. That's a state requirement. And as we developed this narrative, the state of California had not passed its state budget. So we'll point out some of the things that have changed since then. And some of it is very good news. So the executive summary now, so we're updating this, and the operating deficit for the 2018-19 year, we're projecting to be $10.4 million. Of this deficit, $2 million was moved to the special reserve. So we don't, yes, we're deficit spending that's $2 million, but it is going into our savings account in Fund 17. 4.1 million is one-time mandated funds. So that too is not necessarily a strong operating deficit. because it's one time. Yes, it is operating, but I don't consider it a continual operating deficit. And then we typically end the year a little bit better than, even though we've been working on this and keep reducing the estimated actuals for 18-19, we still have a lot of encumbrances going on in there, and we're not sure if people have put in, other departments or sites have put in encumbrances that will not be used. So we're usually about $2 to $2.5 million higher. So you should see a better ending result for 18-19 school year for the operating side of this budget when I present to the unaudited actuals in September. So let's take a look at the local economy. We're still using the same property taxes that we used at well, they were as of April 4th. And so, because we have nothing new. Usually those two come in a little bit higher, and I understand when I was meeting with CDE that that is a very common thing for the Auditor Treasurer's Office to hold on to property taxes until the end, because they don't want to give you or estimate or project more than you will actually get so that you don't spend it. And with that debacle that happened at second interim, I'm all good for that. I'd rather have it come in as a surprise a little bit. The state outlook is pretty good. Governor Newsom thinks that we're going to have a slowing down of the economy, but we've been hearing that for a long time. And I think that people are just trying to project, like, be careful, we don't know what's going to happen. However, just reading the articles from SSC a couple days ago, they came in higher by $603 million. Which is a bit over 6.7%, greater than their projections. So that's good news, and so let's just keep on hoping that that continues. The federal government, they have a budget proposal as of March 11th. I haven't heard much on that lately. I don't get as much information about that as we do the state government or the state budget, but our president has decreased those three items there, the 21st Century Community Learning Centers, student support, academic enrichment grants, and supporting effective instructional state grants. Also, President Sims Moten sent me an article today regarding the president is also looking into increasing the poverty level, which will have an effect on our food service department, our Title I funds, if that goes into effect, and which means students of ours who once qualified for free and reduced may not qualify for free and reduced, and also medical insurance for these students. So we'll keep an eye on that also, and I appreciate the email from Ms. Sims Moten, because I had not seen that. So thank you. Legislative update, still the split roll tax measure is still trying to head to the 2020 ballot, but I understand from Sacramento that this is just a ploy to get something else. So they don't really think that this will happen. So I was excited about it, but I don't think it's going to happen. Assembly bill, and I still didn't correct this, 48, it's supposed to be 428 with special ed funding. This did come through, and we're really excited about this because this puts more money into special ed. The first is that they equalize AB 602, which is the state funding from special ed. And we were in our SELPAs all across the state of California are all funded at different levels. And we are funded at currently about $527, and now we're going up to $557. So that's a $30 increase for each student in our district, not just our special ed kids, but district-wide. So that's about $500,000 there. So that is not in the budget, okay? And so why am I telling you about a restricted money when I'm talking about the operating deficit and this, the unrestricted side is because special ed has an effect on the unrestricted side. So whatever money that we get for special ed, that's a good thing. They also approved students with IEPs who are in preschool. They're anticipating a $9,300 per kid in preschool. We have no funding for preschool at this time. So we're providing special ed services to about 104 students as of 18-19. And now we will finally get money for these students, which is really good. That's about close to $1 million. It depends on how many preschoolers we get for 19-20, but this year we had 104. So that's pretty much the update. And the only other thing that we did in the budget, you may remember that the governor also put some relief towards STRS, but not PERS. So at first they were saying we're going to take STRS from 18.10% to 16.7%. So everybody was telling us, yeah, we feel really good about that. We feel really good about it. So we changed our STRS to 16.7. Well, then a couple days later, they decided to not fund 100% of that towards STRS, but move some to PERS. So we did a quick calculation. So we've budgeted for PERS, and we've under budgeted for STRS. But a quick down and dirty, we're about even. So overall salaries are about, and statutories are, there's no real difference in the funding, sorry. So we will fix that before payroll hits in July. And but there won't be any kind of change in the salaries at that time regarding that. So now we're going to move on to the unrestricted revenues, the changes between estimated actuals and adopted budget, 19-20 adopted budget. So the property taxes for 19-20 are projected to be 4%. Except the RDA, we do increase a little bit more like 10%. But as the debt on the RDA gets paid off, that will stabilize. And once the debt is completely paid off, which is June 30th, 2019, that won't rise as quickly as it has been. So I'm anticipating that they have one more project in the redevelopment agency. And so once that gets completed, that will roll into our secured or unsecured, I forget which one it is, but it will roll into our big property tax bill. Right now it's separate.
Secured.
It's secured. So we should have a slight increase for next year. Other state revenue we decreased as a result of the mandate block grant. We no longer get the one-time funds. Governor Brown was really good about doing one-time funds to us so that he wouldn't overextend himself. Newsom didn't really continue that. So we do not have any mandated funds in the 19-20 budget. The salaries and benefit projections, this is a net effect for the 2% increase we're giving for 19-20, the increase and decrease of statutories, and then we have a reduction of 4 FTEs in that budget. So that's the net effect. Our books and supplies, we're spending down our little bit of mandated money in that area, in the 4,000s and in the 5,000s also. Our costs of property and liability insurance went up, and as our budget goes up, our routine restricted maintenance requirement goes up also. It's based on actually the actuals from 2017-18. Which it was interesting that someone finally did an article on that because at SSC because we were calculating it wrong. But it wasn't a big difference. So that's been corrected. We also have an indirect decrease causing the indirect costs to change. Contributions, our local contribution went up about $3 million. A lot of this is due to the 2% in the statutories. And it's actually a net effect of some of, this is mostly special ed, but a lot of it is also paraeducators. And what you'll see is the paraeducators are on the restricted side. You'll see that we budget for all our paraeducators as a employee, but sometimes we can't fill those positions, so we then reduce our salaries and move them into contracted services. So I'm on page 7, Brian. So as you can see, the deficit is, the operational deficit is pretty large. Went from 10.3 to 10.7, but from estimated to the, it increases over the next year. So we need to make some changes, obviously. Adopted budget for 1920 has no contribution to Fund 17, our savings account. So we note that. Restricted activity. On the restricted side of the budget, we're required to move 3.1 million of our property taxes into our special education, which should happen. There are students over there. We have a decrease in the Title I funds by 10%. We do this every year because we never know what the federal government is going to say. By mid-July, we should have the actual number, and we're hoping that it does go back up from, the 10% reduction up to the full 100%. We have some funding decreases for career tech and education incentive grants. I'm not sure exactly. I couldn't understand if the CTE grant was increased, or I've gotten mixed things in there. They're going to continue it, but I couldn't get, yes, it's continued and it's this much. Haven't found that out, so hopefully there's some increase in funding there. Salaries and benefits, again, are due to the 2% and the statutories increase, and the net effect of some reductions on the restricted side. Books and supplies decrease due to the grant funding. Remember, on the restricted side, if we get $1 million, we budget to spend $1 million. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. So you'll always see a balance there that we should be, money in, money out, because these are the funds that should be helping these children at this year. So we're anticipating to end up pretty much with a zero fund balance, as we should in 2019-20. So page 11, Brian. So this shows the light purple is the unrestricted side of the budget, where we have to carry our 3% reserve. And you can see the darker is the unrestricted side of the budget, and the lighter purple is the special reserve. So you can see that we are deficit spending, and what's keeping us to hold our 3% reserve is now the Fund 17. Let's move on to page 13. Oh, sorry, I skipped a page. So this slide just shows you what we have in mandated, that we've assigned the 1.7 million in the mandated funds. So of the balance that we have left over, 1.7 is dedicated to mandated funds. And then we have some money in lottery. Then the Reserve for Economic Uncertainties is for 18-19 is 5.2 million. And then for 19-20 is about the same amount. Oh, and I'm sorry. It's only 1.2 million total assigned fund balance. So we are now looking into 19-20. We are looking into our reserve, special reserve account for the 3% reserve. We're still in declining mode. I don't see us coming out of this decline until 2024, and that's projected on our live births countywide. So we're still continuing to decline.
Insert a comment here. That's a really important data point. most times you would be distressed, but that's partly why we're a community-funded district, also known as basic aid. And I just ran a number from 2016, and then I projected out not all the way across to the right, but those years of minus 2% enrollment kind of struck me just looking at it. So if you go out to the 23-24 year, we will decline 10% of our enrollment from 2016. That's pretty significant. Now, the financial benefit of that is as we lose kids and our revenue stays steady with property taxes, we need to take advantage of that by just staffing smart. And I'll give you an example. We work hard every week to staff our schools, and our elementary schools, we decreased our staffing by 6 teachers because we lost, I don't know, about 130 kids. So just know we're taking advantage of that. We wish we could take that money and invest it in, just program growth and all kinds of things. But I think that's going to be, in a way, you can see the negative enrollment as possible helps with balancing the budget.
Okay, so I will let Ms. Preston take over with the multi-year projections.
Okay, I'm going to go over some of the assumptions that we built into the multi-year projection. Meg has already mentioned some. We have built in a 4% growth in property taxes for every year. Oh, sorry. Go down one more, Brian. That's perfect. So we have a 4% growth in property taxes for going out to 2021 and 21-22. We have put in a reduction in federal funding for the title programs due to our decreasing ADA, which we just discussed. We have just 2 FTE staff reductions relating to, sorry, I'm going to mess up this word. Attrition. Thank you. We have also put into the multi-year projection increases due to step and column and increases due to the PERS and STIRS rates, which are always changing, but we kind of go with what School Services of California is projecting on their dartboard. We have put in the reductions due to the changes in the one-time mandate expenditures. And we have also put in reductions to books and supplies and services. So as our federal funding decreases, we're also decreasing in the book supplies and services to keep those funding sources equal. And then also as our STIRS and PERS rates increase, we're doing reductions in the book supplies and services also to help try to offset those increases. Meg mentioned before, Brian, if you can scroll down, we're not going to be contributing any more money, or we're not planning on moving any more money to the Special Reserve Fund 17. So you'll just be seeing our interest will be building up that fund going forward.
Lacey, can I ask you a question? So your point about the books and supplies, reducing that to kind of balance the budget. So how does that relate to a student having availability of books and supplies for them? Is it just unused and we just re-looking at it again, or?
So a lot more of it is more in the services area, and kind of, I mean, we're not going to take any instructional materials away from the kids. ETS has been working really hard on getting our iPad leases more down to a reasonable rate, so that'll also help in the future years as we go more towards having the instructional materials on the iPads.
Okay, thank you.
So if you look out at 21-22, as Meg mentioned before, we are now fully relying on the Special Reserve Fund to meet our 3% requirement by the state. So we will continue to work together as a team to try to figure out what we can do to address the deficit going forward.
And if we do end 18-19 better, that all just flows right on through the budget and will help and we continue to look for more places to reduce.
So in September, we'll have that update in terms of that?
Yes, because September will be our unaudited actuals.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I had for multi-year, if Meg wants to add. Oh, sorry, unrestricted. Okay, if you can scroll down, Brian. We did, we wanted to also show kind of just the unrestricted side of the multi-year projection. Because this really, like as Meg was mentioning, shows our kind of more of the operating budget for the school district. And so we've removed all the restricted funds, and now we're just focusing on the unrestricted. So this is where we'll really be kind of drilling down and looking to see what services can be changed to kind of get the deficit to be better. So as like you can see in 17-18, our services were 15 million, but 18-19 we're up to 18 million. So, and then 18 million again, 17-16. So we're really going to be working on seeing why there's such a big difference between the actuals and what we're budgeting. And Brian, if you can scroll down, this was our first time doing it, so I'm going to just point out some errors, and we'll be fixing them going forward. The line for the state recommended 3% reserve, that should have been on the total restricted and unrestricted expenditures, so that line isn't accurate. So we'll be updating that, and then that also is flowing down to making our percentages be inaccurate, but they are accurate on the combined MYP. So that'll be fixed going forward.
Thank you very much, Lacey. So we have one more item that we want to talk to you about, and that's on page 17, Brian, and this is about food service. So food service has been amazing for the past couple years, but I think that we've had some issues, and they're at a crossroads right now. And as you may remember, that last year when we ended the year, they were negative at the end of the year last year. And we thought we were going to work very hard and get that back up to a positive, but what hit us are three major things. One is the cost of employees is hard, and Nancy has quite a few employees. She runs an amazing program, and she does a lot with all our neighbors and our vending and also feeding our students. And preparing fresh vegetables and cooking from scratch is labor intensive, but it's worth it. But we have to get her budget under control. But the biggest hit she had this year, which she did not know was coming, none of us did, was that 3 of our high schools were under program review, I think they call it. And what they have to do is, usually our Title I schools, everybody just grabs a meal and they count them up at the end of the day and say, we had this many meals. But when you're under review, they want to count. So the kids would have to come in and enter their ID. Well, they're not going to do that if the line's really long. They only have 5-10 minutes to get to class. So she lost some revenue there, and it was about $300,000 to $400,000 she's anticipating that she would have had we not been all 3 schools at one time. So they're finished. So hopefully the numbers kept up, and our president doesn't change the poverty level. So if that all happens, then we should be at least $300,000 to $400,000 higher next year, which should pretty much help her out quite a bit. So we have done some things already. First of all, she really is the only accounting, she has, the food service has an accounting tech upstairs in the food service department. So we've taken Liz and moved her out to North Campus, and she will be directly reporting to me. We also have looked at a hiring freeze. Nancy can replace, but she can't hire right now. And then we're evaluating all her contracts to make sure that there's no, we haven't missed something in the calculation of what we should be charging like some of our outside vendors. So we will be doing a major relook at food service this year, starting, I just got all the contracts today, and there are quite a few. So we will be doing an analysis on those over the next couple months to make sure that things are going the right direction. And if not, we'll change them. So if you have any questions, Nancy's also here to answer any concerns.
I just have a question on the student count. Is there a process that we can have ongoing where they can put their IDs in? It's just part of the process and not just when we're getting review? Thank you, sorry.
So it was a perfect storm of 3 of our high schools hitting at the same time when the demographic changes within 5% either way. Usually we have 1 elementary school a year that needs to reapply, and this year we had 3 of our high schools. Going forward, if the demographic doesn't change, then like we have been enjoying breakfast for all in all of our schools for many years, then the numbers should, we lost about $400,000 last year at nutrition break at the high schools because kids didn't want to stand in line and they only have 8 minutes. So, you know, heading into this new year, kids will be able to come in. The flow is much easier to manage and our numbers will go back up.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions, board members, on this item? Or just at this point? I mean, you can ask any time, but just since Nancy's there. Ms.
Oh,
Ford?
no, not for Nancy.
Okay.
No. Okay.
Thanks, Cabs.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Okay, it's open for questions. Ms. Ford?
Thanks. I just looked it up, and the poverty maximum salary for 4 people is $48,000. And if we know what it's like to live in Santa Barbara, changing that would be devastating to a lot of our community. It's terrible. I just wanted to ask Ms. Jette, if you know what the average amount, percentage for salary and benefits is across the state, since ours is 81.3.
It ranges between 82 to 87%. That's what I've seen lately.
So we're on the low side.
One thing I didn't mention, and this is unrelated to your question, but just popped into my head. You know, we got some new language in Ed Code that says that any charter school that's State Board of Education approved, you only pay for your own kids that are going to that charter. That got approved. It's in the it's a trailer bill in the 2019-20 bill or legislation, and so it's AB 75. So that will hopefully decrease also our in lieu of property taxes, which will help. As I calculated at P1, it was about $400,000, but their ADA has gone up. So I don't know what kids are going, how many of our kids are going to Olive Grove. But that too will help us out in our deficit. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier.
Ms. Capps?
Thank you for this, and thanks for the summary. I appreciate that you flagged our attention to food services. And my first question is, are there other areas that maybe weren't quite as stark as that, but that, you know, sort of stuck out as a problem or something to watch going forward? Any rising costs that stood out and a reason why we are where we are?
Just in a brief conversation with Nancy, I believe that the projections for things that she's doing.
All right, just before you, not in food service.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'll restate it more clearly. I appreciate the flag that this program is under 700. Are there other areas that also cause some concern that we should be aware of that didn't make it in your summary, but that you are keeping an eye on? I'll speak more broadly. I appreciate that you have some action items for things that we're going to do in food services. Do you have those for others, given the reality, like cutting down on travel or some other examples that you're going to be really mindful of?
Well, I think what all of Cabinet is really kind of excited about, we've designated every first and third Friday of our Cabinet to the budget only. So we're going to get a lot of traction in our budget. And when everybody gets back in July, we start those. I'm really excited about that because Cabinet doesn't hear all of what's in the budget, you know, because it's $174 million budget, $176 million budget. There's a lot to that. We look at specific things, and of course, 82% of our budget is salaries. And with the increase of pension and things like that, it's tough. But we have to react somehow. So we will be, you know, analyzing the budget quite extensively from here on out. And I think everyone's pretty excited about it. There's a lot to learn in that budget, and they'll see things.
But no other area in addition to food services that stood out as a specific area of focus.
You mean with other funds or just in the? Oh, no.
Okay. And I understand that utilities would be out of that, services and other operating expenditures, which I recognize is only a portion, 13%, 13.9%. If you had to ballpark, what would you say, and you've shared with me our utility bills before, but what would you say our utility bills would be of that 13% roughly?
Millions. We would have to get back to you on that, but I have an estimate in my head, but I would hate to say exactly how much that is.
Okay, I mean, because we've communicated before on that, and just a cursory look at the utilities, there's a lot of variety from school to school and even month to month, and I think it seems like a ripe opportunity to cut costs.
Right, and a lot of those differences are like in water and things. Some
Sure.
are potable, some aren't.
Sure.
Some, you know, some have had a leak, and you know, so you see that those variations sometimes. And I think you're speaking about Franklin. There are reasons for things like that, but we need to let you know that when you see that data.
This year, we also saw a spike in gas, I think just to the cooler, longer winter that we had. So hopefully going forward, maybe we have a little more mild winters, and then we can get those gas bills down a little bit at all the schools.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Reed?
Yeah, just to reiterate, you had mentioned 82% of the district's expenses are is salaries. So it looks like probably a lot of focus is going to be looking at the student-teacher ratio in terms of hiring and staffing on those meetings that you're going to be having.
So, yeah, and the team is already working on staffing meetings. I mean, they spend, I think it's every Wednesday in staffing meetings, and I'll pop in every once in a while, but there's a lot of time spent on that. And it's really, you will see changes come first interim, because as we were building this, they were still working on staffing. So things, you know, have changed. And I mean, Mr. Matsuoka just said that 6, we only have 4 in the budget. So right, you know, the minute we put this to print, we're wrong, because they are still working on it. And they will continue to do so.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Comments? I just want to appreciate certainly the budget being put together, and then certainly your executive summary of doing that. And I think it's important that maybe in some of your future comments to the questions of the board, maybe that's can be included as part of your summary, and looking at are there areas that are also, you know, that we're keeping an eye on, such as the things that are going on with the utilities. So maybe that's can be something in your future executive summaries that therefore letting us know what potential things are coming down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, so
I move to accept the adoption of the Santa Barbara Unified School District 2019-20 fiscal year budget.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Day
Thank
and
you.
Macy. Okay. We are now moving to G4, approval of tentative agreement with California School Employees Association, CSEA, and the Santa Barbara chapter number 37 regarding licensed nursing services. Ms. Peak, thank you.
Good evening, Board of Education. I am here representing Dr. Becchio as he is on vacation, as I think you heard earlier. The first item I bring before you is in regard to an agreement that was reached with CSEA in regard to our LVNs. As I think you may or may not be aware, we have experienced quite a bit of difficulty in our recruitment of highly qualified LVNs. We offer a lower rate of pay as well as less work days compared to quite a few in the private sector. So basically what we have reached an agreement with CSEA on brings us into some parity so that we can compete. It also adds an additional type of LVN called, let me see, I want to call it an LVN 2, and I don't think that's what they're calling it, licensed nurse 2, which works with our high needs students.
Questions or comments from the board? No comments? Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Peak.
Thank
Actually,
you.
Yes. Okay. Actually, you're going to stay up there till for G5. Approval of tentative agreement with California School Employees Association and its Santa Barbara chapter number 37 regarding a creation of a new job description, assessment and accountability specialist.
Good evening again. So what you have before you is another agreement that was reached between CSEA and its Santa Barbara chapter 37 regarding the creation of a new job description, assessment and accountability specialist. The work is aligned with the job description. It is a new job description that's helping with assessment and accountability. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have in regard to it.
Any questions from the board? No questions. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Peak. All right.
We have
Do you have, there's some requests to speak.
one public comment. Yes, please, on this agenda item. On the LCAP, Holly Gill, please.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good evening. You've heard me speak about Adelante, but I'm here tonight as a science education consultant for the district, and I get to work with all of our elementary schools and teachers, and feel very privileged to be able to do that. But I wanted to draw your attention to one item in the LCAP, and it is, let's see, it's under Goal 3, Action 5. When the first LCAP was written, there was outdoor science school, the residential science camp for all 6th grade students, which was huge and a huge cost to the district. And last year that was cut, and then there was funding for, basically it was for field trips for the 6th grade students and other hands-on experiences. And we've been fortunate enough to have the Audacious Foundation come alongside many of our schools, and they're providing this residential outdoor experience for kids. And so many students go to See Me on Catalina Island in 6th grade, and then Astro Camp in 5th grade. And there are schools that are still able to fundraise, and they're making it happen. But I know that we have 3 schools that don't have this experience for 6th graders, and I just think it's a really important thing. And I just listened to the whole budget situation, and I know it's money, and it's we don't have money to spend on frivolous things, but I don't think this is something frivolous. I think we've got these 3 schools that basically it's 5 6th grade classes that aren't going to get this experience, and I don't think they'll have this opportunity during their entire K-12 journey if they don't get it. So the sixth graders from those schools this year didn't have that. And I was with 4 of them today, and it's just sad to me to know that they're not going to get that. So I think we could be creative, and I'm not advocating that the district foot the bill completely, but having been a teacher and raising funds for Science Camp, I know it's difficult, but I've seen how the Audacious Foundation coming alongside and supporting 70% has helped those schools to be able to do it and cover the other 30%. So just want you to consider that. I know in a document that's 239 pages, and that's very deep inside. It's something that is near and dear to my heart and the kids that I work with and teachers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Concludes public comment. Dr. Ramirez and Ms. Carey.
Well, good evening once again, Ms. Sims-Moden, Board of Education. At our prior meeting, at our prior board meeting, we had an opportunity to review components of the LCAP, give a big picture perspective on how the LCAP is oriented, the primary components of it, its evolution in some ways. Before launching into the revision for tonight, just wanted to extend some acknowledgement, important acknowledgement to a team, really, and that's our own Ed Services team, many other authors that contributed to the LCAP across departments. ETS, Fiscal was there hand in hand with us. Every year that partnership gets better and better as far as us understanding one another's role in the creation of it. Also wanted to extend a great deal of gratitude to our Parent Advisory Committee that committed time and effort to help us synthesize and really add a great deal of commentary to this particular iteration. Also wanted to acknowledge something that has come up just briefly in other meetings, and that is the alignment that we've sought to gain with our school plans. That's been something that has also evolved over the last, I would say 3 years, but it really culminated about 2 years ago now in having those plans speak to and from the LCAP. And then finally, I wanted to just sunshine a little bit of the road ahead. From a structural standpoint, this actually marks the 3rd year of a 3-year plan. So next year, we will be looking to revamp, redesign the LCAP for the subsequent 3 years, assuming that there are no big material changes to the template and to the design. And I think what that does is positions us in a very, it sets us up in a very good way to make sure that we are really looking forward and anticipating, what the priorities need to be for the next plan. Many of the ones you see here will needless to say, carry forward, but we're looking forward to that redesign in the future, and more importantly, to implementing this last and 3rd year of the plan. So as I launch into that, I just wanted to provide you with that context, provide the public with that context, so that it may also just help your decision-making and your broader understanding of the way in which we as a staff have engaged with it. So you saw much of this, so I won't delve too deeply into it. Just to say that to dovetail off of some of the comments that were uttered earlier relative to our budget, this is the one area that really will shift rather dramatically for us as we continue down the road of being community funded, and that is that the local revenue from our tax base will exceed the state apportionment, and that's something that we will have to continually represent to the community so that we understand that this will still be very relevant, but it will certainly factor differently for us in the coming years. Again, a 3-year LCAP cycle, and it really is informed by a number of sitting and standing committees throughout schools and then also in the district. I will get to this dashboard. It can be a little overwhelming, but I think it's very powerful in what it speaks to. Certainly the challenges, and I'll just mention this briefly. The LCAP is our best attempt to describe and narrate the work of many, many departments, really the work of the district, the work that the district is really prioritizing. We as district staff in conjunction with our school staff. Ultimately, our resources, something that I think would be important for the public to understand is that when the legislation first passed that shifted education funding to a local control funding formula, there was what was considered gap funding year after year. And what that meant was that year after year, there was significant amounts of quote-unquote new money, new revenue in effect, that would come into our schools, providing us a tremendous opportunity to be able to think about programming in ways that were very creative and that continue to augment our existing programming, our existing staffing. One of the things that has occurred over the last few years as the state has, in effect, met its obligation to us as a district, is that the amount of new revenue has decreased year over year. And why that matters to us in a practical way is that we now are positioned to think in terms of efficiencies. We really need to take a consistently introspective look and try to find the biggest points of leverage in terms of what actions, what priorities we really move forward with, as revenue just doesn't come in at the same rate as it did in past years. I think we experienced it more so this last 2 years, to be sure, but it's something to continue to keep in mind as the cost of other benefits continues to exist for us as a point of concern and a point of tension to the budget. And we will just have to continually be more judicious and more thoughtful. But the other advantage is that we have more information. So it's going to be really important to know which actions and activities we need to double down on to make sure that they continue because they're promising, because they really are yielding the results that we would like to see ultimately for students, and how to be able to work through that and make sense of it with and for our community. So ultimately what we want to see is a closure in these equity gaps that right now present in a very stark fashion. And needless to say, those of us who have had a hand over the last few years, we certainly have heard the incredible priority that many of our community place on one component of our programming, one component of our services, and the input and the tension that exists between shifting funding from trying to prioritize one thing to another, and moreover, the patience that it requires to see things really take hold, because those of us who've been in education for an extended period of time realize that it does take time for things to mature, for things to really show their true potential. So but at the end of the day, what we want to see is movement toward better achievement as reflected in this particular dashboard.
Dr. Ramirez, before you move from this, what does the none mean? Represent that the numbers are too low, or that you can?
Yes, that it's not reported on this dashboard, and most likely it has to do with the numbers being too low to either report on or where there may not even be a representation. More likely than not, it's just too small to report on, and the dashboard would not reflect that.
So, but so with that being said, are we? How are we servicing those youth or those areas, even though even though the number's too low? I mean, is that a good thing? Like, for instance, foster youth under chronic absenteeism. So is that good because it's so low we can't report it, or what does that mean?
It's more likely than not because of the number of foster youth that we have within our district.
The percentage.
And then of that, the number who would be deemed a chronically absent.
Okay, good, thank you.
Great question. And again, here, we just see that that we continue with very strong performances where we've seen them historically, and ultimately what we want is to address actions and put our efforts toward those activities, actions, and priorities that are going to help bring about a better set of outcomes for the students that are to be principally addressed through these funds. So again, to come back to modifications and adjustments, just a high-level view in goals 1, 2, and 4. You see them listed here. We really ventured into representing in our budget implicit bias and the work that, and try to put it, that entire work under one really category as opposed to being multi-funded. We want to really streamline our efforts toward cultural proficiency. Ethnic studies, as we've talked about before, is receiving some much needed attention in terms of a budget allocation to help provide those supports, especially on the design and implementation outset. Family engagement is another core component of our work over the last few years. You've heard in past board presentations much of the work that has gone into those efforts district-wide. The revamp of technology positions, reconstituting those positions and really rethinking the outside of the class support that our district engages with. You'll see the annual salary and benefits, again, consistent with what you've heard, and I know there's been different fluctuations there of the state backfilling or supporting in minimizing those impacts to local budgets. Goal 3, this year, something that was a big topic of conversation around this time last year was those positions in elementary PE and just the awkwardness that resulted from the way in which they were funded. So we have effectively centralized and brought those whole. Something, again, that we're very proud of is the comprehensive plan for multilingual pathways. That promises to be not just a deliverable, but an entire process that we're really anticipating will bring about a great deal of introspection and a deep analysis about the way in which those programs look currently and how to really make them increasingly coherent. And so we have plans that have already gotten underway this spring that we hope to carry forward into the fall more fully. And then shifts in terms of professional learning for secondary counselors as they kind of end a cycle of foundational training for them. And as was mentioned earlier by Holly Gill, there have been shifts to the experiential learning over the last few years. That has been a topic of conversation really since I came into my position, as we have gone back and forth with staff, with leadership, and with community around what that funding might mean, and also as the funding landscape has shifted, some of which was represented by Ms. Gill as well. So with that, I wanted to just open it up. Ms. Carey and I would be glad to answer any questions, anything that the board would like to discuss.
Any question, Dr. Reed?
So Ms. Gill had brought that forward. So is that something that, in terms of equity across schools, is that something that's being looked at in terms of these camps?
We have talked about that, as I mentioned, for a number of years. Let me represent what the ARC has been. About when LCAP was first created, there was a budget space, somewhere in the neighborhood of $175,000. There's no doubt that having residential camps is a great opportunity. We partnered with the outdoor school. We had done so for a number of years. The part that I'll represent the benefit, and the benefit is pretty clear. It does tie in a great deal of science learning, a lot of hands-on, nature-based, and also within a local setting, which is tremendous for kids, particularly those that they may not have come from families for whom that is a common expectation. Now, one of the things that happened in our efforts to be able to lead with equity was to ensure that it became more or less of a sixth grade capstone, a sixth grade rite of passage. One of the things that also occurred in that is that our PTAs, PTOs, which in elementary are very important entities that support us in tremendous ways, shifted a lot of that funding where it was available, not to 6th grade, but to 5th grade. So it creates an inequity of a different sort. Audacious Foundation is a tremendous partner with us, and we have done our best to cultivate that. And they cultivate that relationship, and they stepped into that space to help offset some of that cost. Now, that balance has to also be maintained with a number of other factors. Number one, instructional time. How does that balance with just the need to be able to have students on a regular basis? The other part that a lot of us, that I heard a great deal from the teaching staff and from our leadership, coordinating these trips isn't easy. It's a big commitment of time and effort for our teachers, in particular, who serve as liaisons, for our principals who serve time away from their families, time away from their other commitments. And so all of that factored in, they with us felt like this year would be a good opportunity to still pay heed to the intent, which is to create opportunities for students to experience science in a different way, but also couple it with opportunities that that those kids might otherwise not have. So some of the things that came out of that were that schools started to look at, for example, the California Science Center, and coupling that with an on-site visit to USC or to UCLA campus. Basically, kind of extending our borders, not as an overnight trip per se, but rather as an opportunity to have an extended day. And the thinking behind that was, and just this past week, the teachers doubled down on that by creating kind of a list for themselves of opportunities that could really benefit and lead not just to hands-on science, but also college and career, which is I think an area that we would like to explore much more in the transition from 6th to 7th grade, from elementary to secondary. So to answer your question, I think it really begs the question of what we mean by equity. Because in a pursuit of equity and in a pursuit to ensure that our 6th graders all were normed across the district, it created disproportionality of a different sort. And I'm just giving you what I feel is an honest assessment of the landscape there, which has taken us 3 to 4 years to really get our heads around.
So what are the 3 schools that aren't involved in this? Which schools are not having that?
That don't have an active partnership with Audacious would be Cleveland, SBCA. Well, Roosevelt does not have a partnership. Let me better yet name the schools that do have a partnership with Audacious. That would be Monroe, Franklin, Harding, and McKinley. I'm sorry, McKinley, not Harding, McKinley, and Monroe. Monroe, Franklin, Adams, and McKinley. So there are 4 schools.
Ms. Ford?
Just to follow up on that, so how many of the elementary schools don't have science camp, sleepaway science camp?
In either 5th or 6th grade?
6th grade.
6th grade, it would be those 3. They would be SBCA, it would be McKinley, I'm sorry, Cleveland, and SBCA, to my recollection.
McKinley, Cleveland, and SBCA?
McKinley does because they partner with Audacious.
So,
SBCA and Cleveland.
just 2?
And Harding, yes.
It's very hard for me to wrap my head around the reality that we have 6th graders who won't be able to go to science camp, not only because of the experiential learning, and I believe strongly that it's related to equity, giving kids what every kid in this city deserves, rich or poor, no matter color or zip code. And I also think that there's a tremendous amount of SEL that takes place. When kids are away from home, they're learning how to sleep and eat and do chores elsewhere. And I would just like to say, I'm not asking for a budget modification per se, but that we all really think carefully about the fact that there are some of our students who don't have an opportunity like this. And I see it as very key to equity.
I would agree. Also, in terms of what we're moving towards, in terms of looking at nature-based education and sustainability, the impact of being out in the environment and having that experience, I think, is powerful and enriching for students. And I would also say that these schools are schools that I think need the support. If we have, I don't know Audacious's reasoning for working with some schools and not others. I've heard different things through the grapevine, but is there a possibility of looking or rethinking how we could somehow support the other schools to have these opportunities? I know my son went through this. I know I was a teacher that brought students on trips. I know it's challenging, but I also think if some schools are doing it, it would be great to be able to have an opportunity for all students, certainly, to have that experience. We're trying to be equity in literacy, but equity in opportunities.
Additional comments from the board? Ms. Munoz?
Right, I had a question because, so some of the schools, have it in fifth grade, where they have like a sleepaway science camp?
Correct.
Which schools do?
Roosevelt, Washington, to my knowledge, Franklin. Those are fundraised through their PTOs or foundations. And Adams, Franklin, Monroe, and McKinley have had those experiences through a partnership with Audacious. And that partnership yields 70%, a 70% accommodation for cost from the foundation, with the 30% generated from the PTA, PTO.
Thank you.
Primarily, because it does not come from the school's discretionary budget.
So, one question, so the schools that have the fifth grade sleepaway, do they have the sixth grade as well?
Correct.
So some schools have both?
Correct.
Okay. So are we looking into other alternatives to do?
All right, I'm going to insert myself here because Dr. Ramirez he's walking a tightrope with you as you ask these hard questions. Here's the challenge on equity. So let's say we come in and we fund the gap. So then we have some schools who say, why are you funding just those 3 and you're not supporting all 9 schools? So the word equity gets used so many different ways here. And so then some schools, they don't really need it because they have the resources through fundraising or PTOs. And so we get in this dilemma. So then we'll get criticized the other way. So I appreciate the questions. I hear the equity concerns. I mean, those kinds of lifetime experiences are really important. Give us some time to look at it because it is not let's just solve it for the 3 schools. Because the pushback we get on an equity standpoint, why aren't you funding us on a per ADA basis equal to the support you're providing to the Clevelands and the SBCAs? So we could present a model, but then I think us as a leadership team, as a board, as a superintendent and as cabinet, if it's your vision to support equity, great. But we can't have that spill the other way on the budget because, our budget's tight. All right, so I had to represent that because we've talked about this every year. And, you're asking some hard questions. It's a hard problem. We can bring a model, but it's going to have multiple angles to it.
Mr. Matsuoka, if I could offer up another thought, one of the other things that maybe I didn't represent fully is that this is also based on ensuring chaperones from amongst our parent body. And the commitment of 4 days and 5 days away for many of our parents, away from work, away from obligations, is a significant ask. I'll give you an example. Cleveland had to reschedule last year 4 times due to either a lack of facilities, but primarily a lack of chaperones. So when we talk about what that creates at the local level, and I mean staff, leadership, principal, it creates an enormous amount of commitment on their part to try to secure people for a commitment that requires probably 7 to 8 adults in order to meet our student to adult ratio.
Ms. Munoz?
I was going to say, I also think that, a good alternative is like the extended day where they visit a college campus and get exposure to science also, I think is a great alternative that's more feasible, more affordable.
Dr. Reed?
Yeah, so I think what Ms. Munoz says, I guess the idea is that we have to be creative, right, in the framework that we're in. And so I guess the assumption of these schools don't have it, these schools have whatever, but are there other creative opportunities to ensure that students are getting experiences that are, you know, somewhat engaging in the similar type of processes like what Ms. Munoz is suggesting. And I guess the point is not to just say, well, this is the way it is, and we're going to deal with it, but maybe there's a creative way to think about it and look at it.
Sure, and just to represent, that's the way in which our sixth grade team primarily has undertaken it. No doubt, it looks different. No doubt, it looks different. And I understand that there is a lot of history, including a partnership that has been longstanding with the outdoor school. There's no doubt about that. So we will certainly look to bring that back to our staff. But as Mr. Matsuoka had indicated, if we want to explore ways to do it based on unduplicated pupil count, we could certainly allocate the resources that way, because that would certainly create a different model for funding this. But that would be admittedly a break from what has been done over the last 3 to 5 years.
I would just add to the comment, I appreciate this dialogue because that's the important. We're saying and we're looking from an equity lens and we're looking at that, but the information that we've just had in this conversation really gives us a more informed whole picture of what's going on. And at the same time, when you have the whole information, then you're able to think creatively, what else can we do, such as this suggestion. So I want to encourage us to have this type of conversation when we as a board are asking those questions from our standpoint of the information that we have. So the more information that we have in the background and some of the challenges of what we're asking, if we're having that up front, then we can have those conversations and it don't seem so hard. It's just that we now have a whole picture to look at.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And just to add on to that, I think it's just conversations that perhaps parents are having and the community is having. So I think it makes it important to be transparent and have these discussions and really think about them and think how we can think creatively about how to resolve them. Thank you.
Ms. Ford.
Thanks. I wonder if you could go back to the chart on differentiated assistance, the equity gaps.
Sure.
And I just want to flip the question around. Certainly, we were very concerned about red, orange, and even yellow. But I'm wondering if you can look at the chart and tell me where are some areas that you think the greens can turn blue.
Well, there are a number of areas. Would you like to be more specific?
No, I would like you to tell me where you think we're close to being absolutely at the top.
Well, I mean, in terms of let me see. The performance, for example, of our English learners, to look at the graduation rate, that is something that has obviously increased over time, and that one, although it gets attributed to the high schools, it's really a collective effort. So I think the fact that we have, over the last few years, really focused on starting with our policy, on ensuring that our policy is clear to everybody in terms of reclassification so that it doesn't inadvertently create any barriers. I know that most recently, Ms. Carey has been, and if I could represent a bit of her work, has been working very diligently with the 7th and 8th grade with the junior highs around developing pathways that continue to provide the appropriate assistance for those students while simultaneously providing them maximum flexibility to engagement with elective spaces and elective offerings. So why I point to that one in particular is because that one has a very lag effect. So it will take us a couple of years for those changes that were made 2 and 3 years ago to take full effect. So I would point to that one as one where I think in the next coming years with our efforts coming this next year around better alignment around our pathways, where we could certainly see continued growth and in the next few years develop, turn that into a blue. That would be certainly my hope.
I could also add, if we want to look at this from a y-axis and x-axis perspective, if I look at just the top row, all students, and we kind of look at that aggregate, we've got 3 green boxes there. And if I focus on the column that is college career, there's with the exception of students with disabilities, which we know is actually single-digit rates of college career readiness based on the new construct of what it means to be college and career ready, we don't see any oranges or red, with that notable exception. I lost my data slide there, sorry. So you see mostly, even though there's not a lot of greens, there are a lot of yellows and 3 greens in that college career readiness column. So we have about a 50% rate of college career readiness, but it did increase 5 percentage points from 45% over 1 year. Part of that has to do with the state figuring out what they mean by that and figuring out how to communicate very clearly all the different ways that students can demonstrate college and career readiness, because there are these permutations. And I would be happy at any time in the future to unpack that more, because it's becoming a very important metric for sort of as a very kind of ultimate measure of the quality and success of a school district's instructional program. And it's a new one. We haven't had things like that before. We have graduation rate, but this is a whole other thing. The discrepancy between our all-student graduation rate, which runs about 90% plus, and our college career readiness rate, which runs about 50%, is significant. And so, of course, that begs a lot of questions about how meaningful is our graduation rate and our high school diploma, and gosh, how much more rigorous is this college career readiness standard. But particularly in Santa Barbara, because of a lot of good work and a lot of good programming, we are well advantaged in that column. So even as the state kind of continues to ripen with this idea of college career readiness, we've got amazing CTE pathways. I mean, the fact that we have 24 CTE pathways is very outsized for a district of our size. So that's a real selling point and something that I want to celebrate publicly. Also, our partnership with City College and the robustness of our dual enrollment program, which affords a really viable way, particularly for students who have traditionally been underrepresented in completion of A through G requirements, things like that. We are just uniquely advantaged in Santa Barbara, I think, to see that metric not only grow for us, but grow sort of relative to how other districts see that grow for themselves. So that would be a place that I'm going to be watching very carefully to respond to your question.
Just to add a little bit more context to that, I think, if you want to talk about the supports that are provided for that very thing, look no further than our PEAK program, which has incrementally, really expanded in a very dynamic way from effectively one pathway from La Cumbre to San Marcos over to the east side and into Goleta. So as we see those efforts really go to scale, creating opportunities for bridge, creating opportunities for on-site exposure and course taking at SBCC as early as 9th grade. Those are all important components that are structurally there, and you'll see represented in our LCAP and funded through the LCAP as well, with very strategic partnerships in mind. So we have seen those efforts mature in a way that they're now not only brought to scale, but that they continue to yield the preliminary results that they did many years ago. So in answer to your question, coming back full circle, I certainly see that as an area where we're primed, as Ms. Carey had indicated, to make a big step forward in the coming years.
Thanks. I just sort of wanted to point out that we tend to look at where we have all the deficits. And sometimes if you flip yourself around and you look at where we have the assets, then you can analyze in a different way and not only be proud, but also look at what's really working.
Thank you.
Does that conclude our comments? No public speaks. Do I hear a motion to approve the 2017-2020 Local Control Accountability Plan?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Carey and Dr. Ramirez. Next, we move to G7, approval of 2019-2020 MOU between the Endowment for Youth and the Santa Barbara Unified School District. Ms. Carey.
Okay, good evening again, Board. I'm really excited to bring this MOU and the subsequent one to you. I'm going to be talking a little bit about them together, even though separate agenda items, because I really do want to frame them as coming under the umbrella of ways in which we can extend the kinds of approaches to actually building, in a really beautiful segue off of our conversation we just had, extend the programming and opportunities that we are able to offer youth in our community through the PEAK program. PEAK is a really unique public-private partnership, and it has some facets that I think are worth just reviewing for folks, because we say PEAK a lot and people kind of know it. It's well branded. It's the Program for Effective Access to College, and a great kind of just walk around in your head way to think about it is as the I'm going to pause on that, but if you're familiar with the AVID program in our school, 712, that's a program that exists across our state and beyond our state, but has some very targeted strategies for supporting first-generation college-bound students with the kinds of things that you need to know in order to position yourself to be able to be eligible for four-year college and university and beyond. And so PEAK then comes in and is what we consider kind of the wraparound services that accompany the AVID program specifically, but also just that profile of student. So we have AVID during the school day, and PEAK is a lot of what exists for that same student outside of the school day, including services for families, parent education. PEAK, really relies on youth, on alumni students who are graduates of AVID and PEAK to provide mentoring and tutoring. Those students are often college students in their own right currently at CC or at UCSB. We are developing fellowships, teaching fellowships to try to grow some of our own educators through these pipelines. But there are also gaps in how successfully we've been able to outreach to certain underrepresented student groups when it comes to being able to afford themselves of these extended opportunities during and beyond the school day in a way that is integrated. We know from experience and we know from research that it is relational trust that helps bring folks, we have an abundance of services and we have an abundance of need, but it's relational trust that helps connect those two things, and that we in the schools have to be really a broker of trust in connecting the needs and the services. And we're fortunate in Santa Barbara to have a lot of services to offer. So these two MOUs represents ways to kind of expand, extend, and enrich how we do outreach for that student demographic, that student profile. Specifically, with respect to item G7, it is focused on the needs of our African American youth. We also just were reminded again this evening that there is a low incidence of African American youth and families in our community, but there is not low need, and there is unique need that we have to do, I think, a better and better job of all the time understanding the nature of the unique need. And so this is a way of engaging folks who are of the community, from the community, and who can leverage that relational trust into opportunities for young people. And you see a list there in the board materials of the kinds of services that we aim to be able to provide. Somewhat different services in the next item, and I'll pause and say that once we move to it.
Board comments? It's G7. Dr. Reed?
I would just say that this is a great addition to the work that we're doing for the district. And I was just curious, how did you get involved? How did this connection get created?
It's a great question. Really, the connection was already there. So it was about how do we amplify networks that already exist? How do we formalize them? And how can we, through formalizing them, lend more resources, attention, and intentionality to really what are already existing networks? So we've been in discussion about this for a couple of years, and it took just all the right people at the right time getting at the table saying, this is what this would have to look like. These would be the agreements. These are sort of the rules of the game if we get into a partnership where we're talking about formally mentoring students. And we've gotten those agreements now, those common understandings. So it's a matriculation of a long-standing conversation.
Agreed. I was really excited to finally see this come to fruition. And I know that it's taken a lot of work, and it certainly is worth the effort with regards to that. Just recognizing and acknowledging, just because you're a small number doesn't necessarily mean that the needs aren't that the needs aren't great. And we recognize that. We see that in many of the data, that we still continue not be in underrepresented groups, not being proficient. So what do we need to do to really be intentional about reaching out to them and supporting them? And sometimes it's just acknowledging, then that begins to be that trusted relationship. So I was really excited to see this come forward, and I am very supportive of this MOU. Looking forward for the success of it. So I will make the motion to approve the 2000, unless there are any further questions or comments. Okay, to approve the 2019-2020 MOU between the Endowment for Youth and the Santa Barbara Unified School District.
I'd like to second it.
Yes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, so carrying the momentum into item G8, thank you very much. What I will speak to here is, this is a less about a specific student group and more about a specific kind of service. So this is about college advising and support with the college application process. There are a lot of entities that can offer support for this, and we've availed ourselves of some, and AVID is one of them. We have a very robust AVID program, and we support it at high levels. So I want you to also be reminded of that. But this is a group that has a lot of community connection and was approaching our students, our sites individually, and we wanted to have a more coordinated effort to be able to avail ourselves of the just the resource that this represents at no fiscal cost to us. And instead of having it be kind of a little bit here and there, we really saw a good fit match between our PEAK program and the services that are made possible through Mission Scholars Program. So that allows us kind of the right structure for oversight and guidance and streamlining the services so that our students can best avail themselves of them. So that's the unique comment I wanted to make about this MOU and item.
Comments? Ms. Capps?
Just appreciative of the fiscal impact for both of these, and I'm curious how that's possible. Does that mean that they are doing the fundraising, or we don't ask questions, I guess, if that's it. But,
the director for the Mission Scholars is here. I could invite her up to speak to that, if that would be helpful.
Sure.
Cassandra, you wanna come up?
I'm just, again, I didn't mean to say that flippantly. It's wonderful that you're able to provide this with just our staff time as the cost.
Hi. Thanks for inviting me up. My name is Cassie Lancaster, and I'm the director of Mission Scholars. And we are raising capital from private donors, and many of whom have worked with us independently. Kim Phillips and I have operated as standardized test prep and college admissions advisors in the town of Santa Barbara for well over a decade now, and both privately and as volunteers in schools and in community organizations. And so we've been able to generate a lot of goodwill with individuals in town who we've been speaking to over the last few months, and have been super impressed by what we're creating for our students, future students, and want to fund it. So we're not asking for any money from the district.
Excellent. Thank you. Sure.
And I would also speak to the Endowment for Youth. This is a long-standing organization that has supported Black Achievement way back in the days, Black Achievement Awards with regards to that. So that's been a resource that we've really under-tapped with regards to that. So that's why they always raise that, have fundraising for that effort. So this is a untapped resource that we're able to use now.
So I just would like to thank you. I mean, I just know the experience and the challenge, having your child be prepared for college applications and such. So how does it roll out? How do you support the students? Is it part of a career? I mean, I'm just not sure. Yeah, that would be great.
So this year we're implementing a pilot program in which we'll carry 10 seniors through the process of applying to college. I'm going to run the college advising program, a series of workshops throughout application season, And then we're also bringing in experts in standardized test prep. And another huge component of what we're offering is something that's often overlooked, and that's how to build skills to succeed as college students. So we focus so much, in fact I do in my career, on the getting in component, and we never really talk as much about what happens when they arrive and how to succeed socially, academically, and all of that. And so we're implementing a college transition program in the spring for those seniors, and bringing in someone to teach college study skills. And then we're also, both Kim and I have worked with a number of individuals on a pro bono basis over the last decade who are first-generation college-bound students and who matriculated to a number of wonderful colleges across the country, and they have all agreed to serve as mentors for our younger students to help them with the college transition part as well. So first college applications and then college success in the spring. So.
It sounds terrific. So is there an application process, or how does
Yes, there's an application process. It's on our website, and it includes questions around their transcript, their grades. They need to be show signs that they are absolutely interested in enrolling in a four-year university upon graduation, and that they are financially they qualify for fee waivers or free and reduced lunch. And so we're focusing on a specific group. And then we're also excited about partnering hopefully with Peak because Patricia and her counselors know the types of students that we're looking for, and so we'll be able to target those specific students with their help.
Wow, it sounds wonderful. It sounds like a great opportunity for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would want to highlight that, yes, thank you, Cassie, for being here. That turned out to be very handy, especially because I do want to recognize Dr. Madrigal, who can't be here tonight, for kind of putting the final, tying these relationships together and bridging the needs and the services. We have a lot of college advising services for our students. It's part of our counselors' curriculum that they had in common agreements that they deliver to all students. But we know that some students need different things to have equal opportunity, as we've been talking about. So that is where this pre-existing footprint of AVID and Peak is really helpful. And even within that program, we have partnerships and college advising services already in place, but this will amplify and enrich that type of service. So without creating redundancy and in a really coherent way, because it's coming through a centralized approach with Dr. Madrigal.
I'm delighted to see this. I think it's going to be an absolutely fantastic opportunity for us. I hope we're all planning to keep data so that we see that we see the benefits of your work. And also, I'm wondering if you've been doing this for a while. What's the profile of the kind of student that really benefits from this kind of intensive
good question.
Relationship?
Some of it is quantitative, of course. You can look at the number of honors level or AP level or college level classes that they've chosen to take throughout high school and how they've challenged themselves every year. You could look at the commitment that they've had outside of class to either their school or to their home. A lot of our students that we worked with in the past and expect to work with in the future spend a tremendous amount of time helping their families out at home. And so that kind of stuff is something that we absolutely target and highlight in their applications. And then a lot of it is just their stories and hearing them, and that's harder to quantify. But it comes down to this real passion for learning sometimes, and it doesn't have to be a specific thing, but it's really engaged beyond just what's expected, beyond just graduating from high school, engaged in something else that college can provide for them. Sure.
Okay. Hearing no further comments. Oh, Ms. Munoz?
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's excellent, in terms of the mentorship, and like you said, with Dr. Madrigal and your program, also to have that bridge as to then when they get to college, what are they going to do? I've certainly worked with, first generation college bound students, and I was first generation myself, where they don't have someone to ask, what do I do once I get accepted and such. That's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, so, Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Moving on to G9, approval of the 2019-20 consolidated application for categorical funding for the Santa Barbara Unified School District. Dr. Ramirez and Ms. Carey.
Sorry, good evening once again.
Good evening.
Ms. Sims-Moten, Board. Before you is this is an annual, this is an application that is submitted annually to the state, essentially requesting and formally applying for federal funding for the coming year. This is in the first page. You will see the programs for which we are applying, and that might be a good place to start. There it is. The application for funding requires, that is just a placeholder. Obviously, you as a board, hold the right to approve, but anticipating the support. We had every year we have a formal presentation to our DLAC. So that was something that happened earlier. It was actually this month, and we tend to do it in installments with the most concrete information coming to us right around May, June, as we have all of our demographic data and our figures in place. Here are the 4 programs for which we are applying, and you saw just a brief descriptor of each one of those programs in your cover page, or in the cover page. But it's basically Title I Part A, Title II Part A, Title III English Learner, and Title III Immigrant. Oh, and I'm sorry, there's one more, and that is Title IV Part A, which is student support. So thought I would review this application first. The other one that I'd like to just briefly review is the number of programs. So if you, Mr. Rouse, could help me out with notification of school-wide program. So as Mr. Rouse is finding it, basically the notification of school-wide program basically just indicates what programs are at this point school-wide. And you see that some of our programs date back to '97 as far as being school-wide Title I. Our most recent addition is San Marcos, and you approved their review and their transition from a targeted program to school-wide this past December. I know that we also have Goleta Valley that looks like they're going to be on the horizon as well, and in terms of a transition to. The other one, the last bit of the report that I wanted to really highlight is the one indicated by the school allocations, which has in it would be, looks like the 5th column, the eligible income students and the percentage of which are considered low income. So you'll see in descending order how our school programs stack up one to the next. So I am certainly, or Ms. Carey would be open to any questions that the board may have.
Any questions from the board? I just have a question. So just we were talking about earlier about the federal poverty level. Is this would be impacted by that at all? Is this state? So it could be potentially.
Yeah, this is how we get our title funds.
Okay.
So we put forward in this application, we have to specify and delineate based on the data, our demographic data. ETS is instrumental in working with our fiscal department to square out those numbers. And what we do is we put forward that information to the state, and then you see a percentage in this column indicated per the dollar amount per low-income student. So there is a very specific allocation for each one of our title funds. And in this case, it's $29.80 per student.
So we could be significantly impacted if that actually changes, if he actually are able to go forth with it. Okay.
Right. So in other words, there are also multiple points of impact.
Right. Yeah.
This being to title funding,
Right.
but the food, the federal lunch program is another fund entirely.
Yeah, because this kind of came out, I actually got the announcement through the First Five Association, and we're really aggressively against that. Obviously, it will impact children. So just to this level, when I was sharing that with Mr. Tay, that I didn't realize how much we were tiny we were, but to the level that it will impact us if that should go
It will
forward.
also have an effect on the unduplicated, it could have an effect on the unduplicated pupil count also.
So I think the other, I think, big takeaway and big point to highlight is, for us, being able to appropriately document. Our ETS department has done tremendous work in automating many of our reports, and it's why student services, why we all just act so diligently around making sure that our demographic information is accurate, because it does, on the programming side, we want to make sure we know students' backgrounds and know as much about them as possible, to see, how we can better support and align resources. But just on the fiscal side, you see the impact in terms of the federal and state funding, and in our case, local funding as well.
And that's why I can really appreciate the joint meetings that you're having, so that both sides really understand the impact from one side or the other. That's a crucial piece to be able to move nimbly when something happens to one side or the other. So I just want to acknowledge that as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments, board? Okay, ready for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Don't y'all be afraid.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so we're moving to G10, consulting contract with Dr. Carmel Saeed, implicit blind training. Do we have any requests to speak on this?
Yes, we do. We have 2 requests to speak. So I will call to the podium and welcome Sheridan Rosenberg.
Thank you. My glasses on. So I'm confused. In the spring of 2017, she was given a contract for $52,500 for data mining, data collection, that lives at Westmont, right? I mean, isn't that wildly afoul of FERPA? Teachers, personal information, researching with her partner, Jared Schwartz, of Just Communities, and we're underwriting that research, and that data she now owns, that is actually data that belongs to the district and our teachers and our students. Now we're going to engage in another contract for $63,000 to basically research themselves. Does this make any sense to you? And she owns that research, which I assume she will be able to commoditize. So we're paying her to basically invest in herself, research herself with Just Communities for a product that I would argue should have been turnkey, should have been thrown out to bid, totally transparent. Is this data going to live at some point with Google or another big company that could pay her a lot of money? I mean, that's a fair question. So I see this as an opportunity. I mean, this is an obvious conflict of interest. I mean, in my opinion, it's just corrupt on its face. So this is really an opportunity to break away from a bad deal. I mean, I did read somewhere that your comment about this in the spring of 17, Mr. Matsuoka, that the data collection was edgy. I think it's more than edgy. I think it's really unfair to our staff and teachers and students, and I think it's important to walk away from this. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Jill Rivera.
Yeah, I have some questions also about this proposed contract. I read the 2017-2018 implicit bias summary findings, and on that, it states that Dr. Saeed has been working with Harvard, UCSB, University of Wisconsin to examine the effect of the anti-bias training on teacher experiences and student outcomes. And, quote, she wants to collect one more year of data. For who? That's my question. And my question is a couple, actually. How does this how does this help close the achievement gap? How does this help our LCAP kids? Who owns the research when it's done? Because it seems to me she's got her, she's working with other educational institutions. What does she plan on doing with the research when it's done? If we're investing in it, I mean, if she's capitalizing it on that when it's done, why are the taxpayers funding her research? And I looked at the sample. The sample size from 2017 to 2018 was only 328 participants. And I reviewed some of the general training evaluations, and this is something that could be done with a simple survey. I mean, the questions are: looked forward to training, how much learned from training, likelihood to recommend to others, overall quality of training. And then she works, she does the graphs. I'm in data. So, I mean, 328 is, a walk in the park. That's not that many survey sample. That's a very small sample size. So why we're spending $52,950 for that, and then $63,625 to sample a very small survey size. How much did you learn from the training? How did you like the facilities? Gain insider tools applicable to my work. These are questions we could put a simple survey together and not spend $63,000. So that's my input on that.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Matsuoka.
So this is year 3 of a long-standing project with Dr. Saeed, and also it is done in conjunction with Just Communities. I think 3 of the board members have been around this project for all of the 2 years, Ms. Ford and Ms. Munoz. So Dr. Saeed, as you read her background, she is an expert in, it's more than the implicit bias space, it's this, the IATS, Implicit Association Tests, which there are actually very few experts in the country. She has worked with experts across the field. It is her area of study in the field of psychology. And so the efforts is to make our staff aware of the bias that we all walk around with. And it's something I became aware of about 6 years ago at a conference. And so the work really builds on I would say, the decade-long work of Just Communities. It's a very specific training. Given the public comment, I can address some of the questions and concerns. The privacy, the data is held very securely and strictly by Dr. Saeed. There are agreements coded both ways on our part and her part. All participation in this has been voluntary by our staff, and we don't force any adult to do this. As far as the student data, there are no student identifiers provided. It is strictly student performance, so all of that is anonymized in terms of the data that she has. As to a research project and somebody like commoditizing it, I mean, we have research projects with UCSB. I mean, they come before you as a board like 10 times a year. Do people do research and publish off their work with us? Yes, across so many sectors, so many divisions. So that's what researchers do. And so, and in many cases, we pay for some of that research. You have asked for us to do evaluations of programs, as we should. Sometimes it's external foundations that pay for that research. I would say the community is paying for the research. Is this working? That's a valid question that we should ask about our work. And so the work continues. The hope is to get another set of teachers, and you can see in the the report that we are starting to broaden the experience out to other classified staff who have daily contact with students, who should be aware of the bias that is inside of all of us and that affects how we work with kids. So here's the contract. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Ms. Ford?
Thanks. So to clarify, this is the third and final year. We'll have enough information. She will have gathered enough data that she'll draw conclusions and we'll move on from there.
Yeah, we haven't talked about year 4. I would say from a research perspective, we probably can close the data collection off because she will have enough data to publish findings. I think the training around implicit bias is going to be important for I don't know how long. Right now we've trained over the 2 cycles, I think the report says about 400 staff. Certificated staff and management, we have about 900. I think the classified employee world, I mean, we're just taking a first cut at it. We think about our paraeducator workforce, which is, hundreds. So I think the need to train in implicit bias should continue to year 4. The question about the research project, I think that part we could decide we've got enough data and we can close that off. But as far as continuing implicit bias training, until bias is gone in our district and society, I think we need that training.
Ms. Capps?
Thank you. I'm still confused by the scope here, and so I appreciate the questions from the public. Is this for training or is it for the research? I know she works closely with Just Communities, but it's not defined in what was provided to us.
Yeah, if you look at the appendix, it breaks out the dollar value. I would say 20% of her contract is for direct services, for trainings, contact with staff. The majority of her contract is for the data collection, the back end, and the research.
And thank you. And I was also confused when we approved the contract with UCSB and you stated that it was going to remain separate from this research. Why is that? Why wouldn't we want the evaluation, which we have identified as a priority, to be as robust and shared as possible?
The research that Dr. Saeed is doing, I mean, it's been in production for a couple years. I mean, it's not completed, and so to send results before all the data is in and the research is done, I think it would be premature to share that with another evaluator. So she's ready to share it, but I think when the research is done,
sure.
I think given the long arc of the evaluation of Just Communities, I think her preliminary findings could be helpful to the UCSB team. But I think the UCSB study is its own process. We're gonna supply the quantitative data. It's the qualitative data where they have to interview a lot of people. That's their own process. So I could see sharing the results when it's time.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I appreciate that. I just think that we want to not have 2 different projects not ever connecting at the right time is my point.
Yeah.
And I thank you for pointing that out. I hadn't seen that in the document. That's much more helpful as to how this amount is broken down. Thank you.
Additional questions? Dr. Reed?
I was just going to say, I think you did provide a correlation between implicit bias training and Just Communities when we had the discussion relational to the evaluation measures. But I think it's an important program, and I'd like to see it completed.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
I support that. I mean, to try to stop it midway wouldn't really give us where we're trying to go, essentially, to where we've been and where we're trying to go and how things that we're trying to improve. So I do think we need to see it through completion. With that, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are moving to G11, Sustainability Teacher on Special Assignment, Job Description. Mr. Matsuoka.
We had discussed talking about the discussion agenda item in conjunction with this.
Yes, and I did, so it was late in the afternoon. So they're 2 separate things in terms of we're approving the job description And then the discussion is how that's been implemented. So in terms of that pieces, so they're two separate things. We need to approve the job description first.
Yeah, but to me, it doesn't make sense that we have a discussion as to why the job description is the way it is after we've already approved it.
Well, I think the action that came back was to approve a job description for sustainability TOSA, and then this, if I'm understanding, the discussion is not about the job description, right? Or is this how to implement that? So just so that I'm clear. Okay.
I still have the same concern, which I flagged to you earlier, which is item H3 is context as to why the position is now not full-time. But we were voting on it in item 11 prior to that discussion.
So is the job description including how much time it's been in terms of that, is my question.
Yeah, the job description as written is written as a full-time job.
But with a budget of a part-time. So we're approving a part-time budget without the rationale. I'm just asking to please combine to flip the order of this to make more logical sense, that we would actually have the context before making a vote on a budgetary item with the job description.
Well, all of the jobs that we create, you approve a job description, and then we talk about the implementation as a separate decision and process. This is a full-time job description. There's nothing in here about part-time. We have many job descriptions that is written for a teacher full-time position. Sometimes they are filled as part-time assignments.
Ms. Ford?
Well, all true. I'm just wondering if it actually just seems to make more sense to talk about the report item and then to vote on the job description. It's all like a package deal to me. I don't see why we wouldn't do the report first and then talk about something that we take a vote on. It's usually the other way around. I think that's practical. It sounds rational to me.
So is this on this particular item? Because historically we have done it in the sense that we have discussed, we have approved the job description, and then we discuss it. So I'm just wondering, is it particularly this item, or what is it?
Well, for me, I like it a lot. I think the job description is amazing. Then I approve, for example, I vote in favor of this or make the motion, and then later on in this meeting, I'm asked to consider a half-time position when I was gung-ho and very excited about a full-time job. So it doesn't make sense to me to do it in this manner.
I'll add, it's contrary to the previous report that connects with this action item. We had, a few weeks ago in a board meeting, we had a report to lay the groundwork for this vote. And now this report is new information and new context.
However.
This is additional information. Go ahead, Dr. Reed.
However, what this is a job description for the district. And we have in the past made judgments on job descriptions without report or context or implementation. We have many job descriptions that have been brought forward that we haven't even talked about implementation yet, but they've been brought forward. So I don't see an issue as to why we can't vote on a job description and then be provided the context of how this might be rolled out or implemented. I don't see really a reason, in my opinion.
My rationale and the request for this change is because the implementation is different than what was discussed in a previous report related to this job description.
Ms. Munoz?
We were provided, the agenda ahead of time, and I'd like to look at the job description and having us approve it or not, and then proceeding with the discussion agenda and the report.
Okay. Do I need to have a motion on that? Because we seem to have some disagreement.
Yes, I move to, I raised to the president earlier today, is to request a change in order of the agenda so that the report is in connection before a vote on a job description.
Great. Okay.
I'll second it.
Second it. So let me do a roll call because we're going to need one. So, Ms. Sims Moulton? No. Ms. Capps? Dr. Reed?
No.
Ms. Munoz?
No.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Okay.
I'd also like to say that I personally think it's not a motion issue. I think it would be the decision of the president.
Well, I did make that decision, but there was discussion, so I wanted to make it fair that everybody got their voice in, and so therefore the vote is, and so we're going to go ahead and finish the discussion in that, and we will take the motion as it stands.
All right, so here's the job description. The sources of input was Mr. Vizzolini, myself, Fernando Garcia Reyes. He's one of our project managers. And so we collaborated on this. We tried to capture as many of the ideas that were in that sort of broad report, and we added a few other things that we think are relevant to this job.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I failed to say that we do have one speaker on this item.
Oh.
Okay.
Ms. Linda Johnston, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here to express my support for the full-time position of the Sustainability Officer. And I also want to say that there were others here to speak, but the topic became so late tonight that they had to leave. I'm a parent of 2 children in the Santa Barbara School District. One is graduated and one is 14. I asked my 14-year-old before coming tonight, I said, she's entering high school, I said, have you seen environmental waste at your school in the last couple of years? And she said, oh, yeah. And then she gave me some examples. And I want to say that's not to be critical. I believe that the teachers and the staff at the school have so many responsibilities, and they do a wonderful job. The teachers are really our heroes in the community. But their time is limited, and they may not, and many of them do not have this kind of expertise. I believe that the school district really does need a designated position, full-time position, to guide us in lowering our carbon footprint and increasing our sustainability efforts. I see that in the job description, there's 5 domains that have been identified: the facilities, utilities, food service, transportation, and teaching and learning. It's very exciting for me to see this kind of position, and I think it could make a big difference for all of us economically, as well as preserving our environment. I think it could significantly reduce our carbon footprint, which is critically important. I also think that it will be very helpful to teach the children and their families how to better care for and protect our beautiful environment. I think, most of us live here because we so cherish our beautiful environment, the mountains and the ocean, and what a beautiful place we live. I think it's important for us to teach our children throughout their school years how to reduce the carbon footprint, and they can develop sustainability habits. And by developing these habits, we will have taught them to be more responsible citizens and good stewards of the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging in on the late time.
Okay. So did you have any additional comments on that?
No, there's the job description, so open to questions or comments.
Comments from the board, Ms. Ford?
Thank you. I found myself being very excited by the job description. I think it calls out so much that we need in the district, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's powerful. I wonder if it might be worthwhile to sort of divide it up into phase 1 and phase 2, because there's no way, whether it's full-time, 3/4 time, double time, that anyone can do all those things, and there might be a way to just sort of say, here's where you start and here's where you end up. That's all I would say in terms of possibly suggesting a modification on the job description.
I appreciate that comment. I mean, this is a really broad job because it encompasses so many parts of operations and teaching and learning. Listening to, what was the gentleman's name? Monterey Peninsula, David Chandler. Listening to his 5-year arc in the position, I heard exactly what you described. I mean, his first couple years, he just had to get a handle on the data and understand baseline. He started grant writing, maybe year 2 or 3. they're probably just barely getting into the teaching and learning side. So I do see the first year as, how do we build the foundations? To me, the most important is just getting a handle on our data, because the spreadsheets that we started looking at, there are patterns there that beg all kinds of questions. So I do see a phased approach. I don't feel like we need to lay that out in the job description, but know that in implementation, we'll have to start with the beginning steps. Yes.
Could I just counter that a little bit? I just think, having looked at a lot of job descriptions myself, some job descriptions really can scare a person off because they look so difficult. And that's why I was thinking it might help if, it was sort of clear what some of the, first things that you want someone to sit down and do, so that they know that there's not an expectation that, that they would do all those things the first year. That wouldn't be possible. I just don't want to scare off great people because it isn't possible to do everything on the list.
Well, it goes back to, this is a vision statement. The report a couple board meetings ago, it was a visionary statement. That's why I think this resonates with all of us. It is. If you asked me to cut it down.
No, I'm asking you to divide it up into phases. Top priorities, next phase.
To me, that's an implementation management step that I think you have to trust us that we will guide this person and say, okay, out of all of this, do this much.
Totally understand that. My point is that I just thought it might be worth considering because of candidates being worried that they couldn't do it all. So perhaps you could add a statement that, this will be phased in all these tasks would be phased in over time. I just don't want us to look back and say, why didn't we get any good candidates?
Well, I think we're going to talk about that under the report section, about the recruiting process.
It would have been good to do that first, but just me.
We're going to talk about both before we're done tonight.
Okay.
So I would like to acknowledge, I think the idea of carrying out the vision, which was the 5 areas, I think is a great thing. I think I would hate to see any of those left out because I think they're all crucial and they all need to be integrated. But I also wanted to make a point that I have not seen such a quick turnaround, and I would like to acknowledge the district and Mr. Matsuoka for taking this on and creating a framework and then creating a job description in such a short turnaround time frame. So I think that's something to acknowledge in this process. And as we move forward, how we implement it or such, which we'll discuss in the further report, is something that in all of our programs and all of our positions, we need to be thinking carefully and consider all of the ramifications such that you brought up in terms of implementation. So I think this is a great start, and I would approve it.
Yeah, I'll get right to you, Ms. Capps. I will echo those comments in terms of the board we're the what. We're asking you what to do. We're directing you what to do, and you've come back with that sense. And so the implementation is the how in terms of that. So that's trusting these very capable and highly skilled implementation team to be able to do that. And I think as we get to that part, we will really get to see what it looks like in terms of what we've asked. How does it implement with the folks closest to the ground of how it's going to impact the whole picture? Because we need to keep that in mind and just giving a little bit of respect to the voices that are coming that are closest to this and who are hired to do the implementation of what we're asking them to do. Ms. Capps.
Thank you. We received a handful of letters from the community and from people who've been working on the sustainability committee who were quite disappointed that this is not a full-time position at the start. I don't know how to address that because we haven't procedurally even presented that report. So I'm just quite stymied by this process of this evening. I know we just had a vote on it, and so here we are. But I do want to reflect that the Sustainability Committee, as you all well know, has been working diligently, and this is the #1 priority of students, parents, teachers, a petition of 1,000 students at Santa Barbara High School. And so now here we are, and I just don't even understand how a part-time position can even begin to tackle the things listed in this job description. I'm not asking for how that will be implemented. It just seems like if the emphasis is on, one of the emphasis is on cost savings in order to pay for the position, as we've seen elsewhere in Oxnard and Monterey, how would someone possibly do this job not at full time?
So I know we're going to get down to discuss that, but we do have a motion on the floor. But to your point about the efforts and the work that is going on, you're absolutely right. We were just 2 or 3 meetings ago looking at ethnic studies. We were expecting a year to come in earlier. Then we had to make a decision based on the input from the staff that said, yes, this is what you want, board. Everybody was excited about it. A lot of effort, community effort had gone in with regards to the ethnic studies, try to get it forward with regards to that. But when we looked at the team saying, hey, you need to relook at it, and then you need to take a step back. Yes, I think everybody was saying how disappointed we were when the fact we could not get the original graduation date that we had worked toward. So I think this is a similar situation in that sometimes you have to take a step back in order to look through it, phase it in, and have that discussion through those eyes of the totality of what we're asking to do. And I think that's important for us to have this discussion about sometimes, even though the work has went on, it doesn't mean that it's not important. We are doing a lot of sustainability efforts, much to your credit, Ms. Capps, that you have brought to fruition that has happened. We have an electric station out there. We're doing a lot of food things. So the effort is there. I just think we have to look at totality, what we're doing. And sometimes that may not be what we originally wanted.
Okay, my question was for Mr. Matsuoka, please.
So we're kind of bleeding into the report, so I was going to save it, but I'm going to go ahead and begin to present some of my logic and arguments.
But can I just hold it? I'm sorry. So I need just a comment. So just for order, can we take a vote on the action? So
I'm not ready to vote. Actually.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry. I don't know why this is contentious.
It's not contentious. It's just a disagreement on how we get there, and I think it's important to have this conversation in terms of that. So before you finish, I just have Ms. Ford has her hand up.
Thank you. I have just a question about TOSA. Are there any other part-time TOSAs?
Yes.
Can you describe what they are?
District Avid Coordinator is 0.6. We have others. We have our tech TOSAs who, some of them teach 4 periods and have 1 period of release for coaching.
You also have the TOSAs you just talked about with regards to Mad Academy.
Right, lots of sites. Those are site-based.
Yeah, so that's looks like the Mad Academy directorship is going to be divided between 2 people. So part-time teaching, part-time leadership.
And are all these part-time TOSAs are part-time teachers?
Sometimes they're full-time employees, but they do part-time, curriculum development, leadership roles, and then part-time teaching. Or in one case, like Sandy Robertson, she's a retiree, so she's full-time, works on
Full-time, part-time.
full-time, part-time, yeah.
Full-time out of classroom, part-time.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Minogues?
Yes, I also want to look at, looking at it separately, that we have moved on sustainability speedily. I mean, a few meetings ago, we were just considering it, and as Ms. Sims-Moulton said, we're now already ready to approve or not approve a job description. So I'm impressed. I think that, we can all agree on the environment and Santa Barbara and our schools and the importance of it, and I'm hoping that we can work together as a board to move forward.
So I did have Dr. Reed approve the motion that was on. If you didn't, then I misunderstood.
Did you make a motion?
No, I just thought you in terms of approval, but Ms. Capps?
I just had a couple more questions for Mr. Matsuoka. Obviously without naming names, do you have someone in mind for this job description?
I do not.
Okay. And again, it's challenging because I have, my questions are about the part-time nature and how hard that is to hire somebody at part-time.
I would just like to make a comment, but you're making assumptions that there's going to be a part-time, that you're talking about the report. We haven't even had a discussion about it. Right now, the focus is on the job description at hand, which I think is something that we should be looking at. This is a job description for a TOSA, one FTE, to however that's divided or whatever, but the implication is that there is a TOSA who is going to be working, or a combination of TOSAs, I don't know, that's the how, but 1.0 FTE. So I think if we want to move forward and really get this to happen, we have to have a job description to do something.
Sure, I'll answer that. The reason why I was requested the change in format is I'm worried. I'm worried that this will not be as fulfilling as we need it to be. I don't agree that the district has made great gains on sustainability. I've had several board members previously saying, this is so amazing. We've tried for, in one case, like almost a decade to try to get more activity on sustainability. I do see some progress, and so there's a lot of history that we are far behind as a district. We have no solar on any building in this district. There are so many ways in which Oxnard is saving money in ways that we are not saving money. And I'm very concerned that this change in approach reflects the lack of a commitment that I want to know is there. And I was surprised to see it in the agenda without any sort of communication. I would have, had I had a heads up, I would have given communication to hardworking, very passionate committee members who are spending a lot of time on this. And they're out there in their schools doing a lot of things. I can tell you from personal experience, the Green Committee at Roosevelt has been trying for 4 years to get a scrap program. There are these institutional barriers that just exist. And while everyone's well-meaning, and this is a priority amongst many priorities, I want to know that it's actually going to happen, and to see just, again, without any kind of heads up from the superintendent, that there is a change in approach from what we've discussed all the way along gives me pause. And that's what makes me disappointed today, discouraged, and dismayed by my colleagues for not even allowing a more robust conversation that I've asked for respectfully to make sure we understand what we're voting on.
And to your point, we do have a process where we're trying to get the job description passed. Then we can have the further discussion with regards to your comments in terms of, so we've got to take one action before we take the other. It doesn't mean that there's any less commitment to this conversation. It may not be in terms of that, but I really want to move us forward on either approving this job description as it is on the agenda or not. So
That's been loud and clear, but there's no action after this. So this
well,
is
it's discussion, and we certainly have the opportunity to give direction if it's in terms of that discussion, how we would like to see it. That's the part about the what. Now we're going to be in the discussion talking about to Mr. Matsuoka. So this is how you're planning, and this is our comments on it, and this is our discussion. So I really want to move on this action. I do. If we're going to have a motion, whoever wants to make the motion, let's go.
I would like to make the motion
Do I hear a second?
for sustainability teacher on special assignment job description.
Okay, I second it.
Let me do a roll call. Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Ms. Munoz.
Aye.
Dr. Reed.
Aye.
Ms. Capps.
Aye.
Sims Moten, aye. Motion passes. So can we take a break, which we normally do between action and report, and we'll come back, because I think we need one. So we're going to come back into session, and we're going to take item H1. It's all of 1 minute, I understand, from Ms. Chate, and then we'll continue on. But it's an absolute necessary, so.
Thank you, board members. So due to Ed Code 42141, we are part of a workers' comp self-insurance JPA, and each year they do an actuarial like we do with our liability. And so they did an actuarial and found that the ending fund balance is estimated for June 30th, 2019 at 46 million. So I'm required to report out that it's just a formality, that they do have enough money to fund the workers' comp.
Thank you. Do you have any comments or questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Ms. Chate.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to skip number 2 and go back to, or go to H3 so that we can have a continuity of that conversation. So, Mr. Matsuoka.
All right, let me begin with some comments. As far as my commitment, my personal commitment as a superintendent to a full-time position, absolutely. It needs to be a full-time job. It's a big job. Now, so I want that on the record. I want you to hear it. We need a full-time person. But with many rollout of programs and positions, we've done it stepwise. So now, the reason why I presented all of that budget backdrop is, you know, we all have hopes and dreams. You have them. We have them. Everybody over there has needs for personnel improvements. I mean, I looked at the data. Our average income is smack in the middle of the state. So here we are. I mean, Santa Barbara it's perceived as a high wealth place, but you know, our income is average. So I went back and tracked from the board report in November, and this was before Ms. Ford and Ms. Munoz were on the board. Remember, we thought we had good financial data, so we presented our hopes and dreams, and then we looked at the first interim and we said, okay, we got to pull back on that. So I pulled forward the first four, which was from the November 2018 report. And I say this as context, okay? There's no dollar amounts there, but these are all really important things. You've all heard us. Some of it you've voted for, like the elementary APs. I mean, at least we got 2. We would love to have 4. All right, and then the things that have emerged in the last 6 months. So we have the dual language immersion implementation that's coming. Next year is year 0. It's a planning year for implementation in 21-22. You heard the multilingual pathway proposal. I already spoke with the consultant, almost all of us in cabinet have. She says when we produce that report, there are going to be recommendations that are going to cost money for English language learner programs, for dual language immersion. We've become, I don't know if we've become more aware, but our facility custodial needs, we're still restoring the cuts from the last recession. And then you've just been through the request for ethnic studies now for qualified teachers. And so we have challenges on so many fronts. All right, so that's just backdrop. All right, as I thought about the hiring of this position, okay, I want you to hear me on this because hiring is so important. We approved a job description. Great. If I posted a position tomorrow, our certificated teacher workforce is not checking email right now. They're on vacation. So from a due process standpoint, if I post a position that's brand new, and it's a really great job, I think we could have a lot of interest, but then we hire and fill it by late July, I think we will be rightfully criticized. Why did you run that during summer? How come you didn't run that when we were in town? My concern is if we were to fill that in early August, and let's say we hire a teacher from our district, we don't know where that teacher is going to come from. It could be secondary, it could be elementary, but I'm going to throw out a hypothetical. I'm going to use my teaching background. What if it was a high school chemistry teacher? Or the construction CTE teacher at one of our schools. And we pull that person out August 5th or 6th. And we're opening school on August 20th. That's probably my biggest pause with going so fast because, yeah, we could fill the position and then we create an instructional dilemma for 150 kids or 32 kids in an elementary classroom. I don't like doing that. I don't like filling holes so late in the summer. And so, yes, commitment to full-time, but let's do an appropriate process. And as far as filling it, I mean, maybe we find enough people that it becomes a full-time team. I mean, I'd be fine with that. In fact, there was a time right after the request, my first cut at this was actually a team approach instead of a position approach because the job description has a lot of domains. It actually goes back to the 5 dimensions of the program. So the reason why I'm recommending a slower approach, couple things. We just approved the budget, all right? It's not in the budget. Can we afford another FTE? We can afford it, but we should always do things as part of a whole development process. My biggest concern is asking us to hire in the dead of summer is not the right time to hire a quality person in a quality position. So those are my comments. This is going to be a full-time position. I'm just suggesting a 2-year process to get there. So those are my opening comments.
Comments from the board? Ms. Ford?
I think there's actually a solution, and I've done it a few times successfully, and that is you open the position and you, full-time, you open the position and you keep it open perhaps a month, and then with the understanding that maybe the job actually starts October 1st. So if you get a chemistry teacher that is really good, they start the year out. You find a new chemistry teacher, and then they transition to their new position. I think that happens all the time, and I have a very strong fear, coming from my experience, that this would be a lost year because of it being part-time, and that concerns me. Because it really, to all the points that were made earlier, it's visionary, it's powerful, it shows commitment, and I just don't think a part-time person could accomplish much in a year.
All right, let's make this an interactive dialogue. Hiring a chemistry teacher in September, October is almost impossible.
Okay, that's hypothetical.
Well,
so scratch it. You don't know what your applications will look like. We're all guessing. Is it a science teacher? Is it a 3rd grade teacher? Is it someone from another city? I don't know. I thought Laura's question was good as to whether you have someone in mind, because I have no idea who really is going to be excited and passionate about this job. I don't know, but I'm excited that someone would see it and want to start as soon as possible.
Additional comments? Ms. Capps?
Thank you. In my experience, teachers answer emails. Anyway, I'm kind of curious on your process, because we've had some good discussions about this, and it does seem like a change in course, and this wasn't flagged before that it's not possible to hire at this stage. So I guess I just hope you understand that I do feel, again, as the person who's been communicating with a sustainability committee, that I didn't have a rationale, and we were very much caught off guard. So perhaps you could just acknowledge that this could have been communicated to someone who is not like you and has not been in the position of hiring teachers, that, originally this could have been flagged. Oh, this is a great idea. I love it. I'm committed, but there's no way we can get this off the ground, because now I've sort of kept this committee humming along, suggested that you might want to reach out to them, et cetera. And this feels like a change in course. It is a change in course. And now we're looking at posting it in winter of 2020. I share the concern of who could possibly do this job at a part-time position. It's quite daunting. We just discussed and had consensus around the fact that it's a quite daunting task, even as a full-time position.
So as far as a change in direction, this thing moved really fast. I mean, I looked at the board meeting date. It was April 23rd. Okay, so I appreciate the acknowledgement of the board, how fast this has moved. Right? And so, you give me an assignment. I created the job description. I did need a month because of graduation. During that time, as I started thinking about, okay, the actual HR execution of this is going to be really problematic during summer. So, Laura, I know this caught you off guard. I apologize to you that it feels like a change in course, but this is a board conversation, okay? I feel like I get a lot of singular direction from you about this topic. And this needs to be a whole superintendent board governance team decision.
Well, but it was her vision.
Well, okay, when we have, so I work for a board, but I also work for 5 individuals, and this just gets to some of the hardest parts of being a superintendent. I try to attend to each board member's hopes and dreams, but there's a bigger picture sometimes. There is.
Thank you. He's addressing me. This is a committee of people, and it's not just me. I appreciate the apology, but it's a committee, and it's also a community that really cares about this. And there's been, to that point, there's been so much attention around this position. So I think that hopefully will aid in the response. And so I do think we're behaving on hypotheticals. I would ask if you find somebody who could potentially do it as a full-time position and isn't then ignoring a classroom, as you've identified, could be a situation. Is that something you would entertain, that this could be a full-time position, again, given that where we live and the dedication towards sustainability and the fact that there could be, in fact, somebody who's perhaps even from the committee of people who've self-selected to be working on this? Would that be something that you could entertain, that this could be full-time from the beginning?
Well, it could be. I mean, I could post it as full-time, but I can't predict, I can't control who applies, and I can't filter who to interview based on your teaching position. So like if I get a high school teacher in a role, if they're the best candidate, we need to interview them. I'm not going to filter candidates based on the potential impact of the classroom that they leave. That's just not a good HR practice. I have to interview the candidates that apply. My concern, if we enter a process and it's full-time, the chances of it creating a dilemma for us on a hiring and staffing is reasonably high. And so you ask me to run the personnel of the district. I think that's a bad decision from an operational leadership standpoint. I mean, hiring a position in July and August, I mean, we're trying to fill the last spots. It's really hard. The candidate pool isn't out there. Now, I think this is a new job, so we're going to get interest, but the domino effect of that, do we have to do that this first year? Can we get there stepwise? That's what I'm asking the board.
And so this was not clear to you then when we had this previous report?
Well, it's moving pretty fast. So, the job description, that was my first task. I mean, it got delayed by a couple weeks because of graduation. As I started writing it, I honestly started looking at the calendar of when we approve this. Okay, it's June 25th. Almost the entire cabinet is about to depart on vacations for the next 3 weeks. So to post a position, screen it, hire it, I mean, this thing's going to get filled in early August. We're not going to have a candidate to recommend on July 23rd because we're all gone. So then you look at August, that's when we get closer to the year. I think any time you hire in July and August is just creating issues.
I have one more question. Thank you. So, I mean, if you want to go next, you can.
Well, go ahead.
I just lost my train of thought, excuse me. But originally when the report that we were presented prior to this, you had talked about, which I agreed with, the cost savings, and that this position would be a 2-year position to see if it actually does achieve the cost savings that so many other districts to our north and to our south have done. Do you still put that time frame on this, given that it wouldn't be a part-time? So I'll speak to my fear. My fear is that it would be hard for someone to achieve that kind of cost savings that I believe, my hope is that does exist in this district. And if someone's only part-time with all the other, factors inherent in the job description, that it would be hard to see those cost savings as immediately as it would be a full-time position.
So would we make a decision after almost like a 1.5-year trial? I don't think we need to do it that way.
Okay.
I mean, if we go part-time, I think we have to just say, well, the first year is about getting the foundations built. Let's get the data collected, and then we start the savings question the next year for 2 more years.
Well, that makes sense to me, and I appreciate that, because made me concerned that, well, of course, this person is not going to be able to, again, achieve those kind of cost savings.
This is going to work. It's going to work. And it's, you know, gosh, give us a chance. Like, even with the part-time, I mean, you know, Steve's got, he knows our buildings. I'm probably going to stay involved in this. All right, I think it's important. It's because it's been such a high-profile board topic. I mean, I think you can tell I like this topic. I mean, I'm really passionate about this, but I'm also doing it in a measured way with the operations of a school district and our budget. So I think we can find some savings, even in year 1, or at least set us up for savings in year 2.
Dr. Reed, and then Ms. Ford.
Yeah, I want to just reiterate to the board and to my fellow colleague, Ms. Capps, is that I do think this is a very important position, which is why I stood forward to put forward that we vote on it. And, but I also have to think back of my role on this board, which is not the how, but the what of what it is. And you definitely brought forward this important, I think, opportunity for our district. I want to kind of step over and link my conversation also to Ms. Sims-Moten in my experience in dealing with cultural proficiency and with the ethnic studies. Right now, sort of having to put it on the back burner of what we were hoping to move forward dramatically. We were going to implement it in such a way that it was going to happen. And through the process, as information came forward, as things became more transparent, Ms. Carey had, and through conversations with the community of what they wanted and what they expected and what the district could do and what we have the potentiality to do, there had to be a step back to reflect on what was the best approach to ensure that this is going to roll out in the most successful way possible. So was I excited when I heard that news? No. I said to the group, I said, this is disappointing to me. And when I first heard about it, and I didn't hear about it, you know, in a week in advance. I heard about it right before also we were making this decision. So process sometimes doesn't happen in the time frame that we expect. So I guess I'm just trying to provide a context to the situation we find ourselves in. And I would like to see how we could work together to figure out the best opportunity for someone to take on a job such as this, which is a very, you know, it's a big scope of a job. I think all jobs descriptions are, they're all this way. I mean, I just looked at the one I got and I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, like I have to do all this. There's more to it and they come in phases and I think it happens in different times. I also think the idea sort of that you threw out, Mr. Matsuoka, as a team, I don't know, maybe that's a way. It's so, as a team, you could have more, perhaps, impact in areas across the 5 domains versus one person who happens to be more, have the ability to maybe be more facilities oriented, but there's definitely going to be somebody that's more teaching and learning oriented. So a team approach might even be, and I don't know, because I think that's really the how, but it sounds interesting to me as an opportunity that we could perhaps, you know, consider. And that would be, you know, maybe as a collective team, they come together, just like we have a team now to work for the Matt Academy or teams in other situations. I think that there's a lot of brainstorming that could be done in that situation. So I guess I'm just trying to, I don't know what the best approach is. I want to understand. We want to make this happen. I feel very strongly it needs to happen. So I want to make sure that when it is rolled out and when it does happen, that we're going to do it in the most effective and robust way we can to ensure that it is successful.
So a book that has been shaping my thoughts about orgs and how you get work done is Team of Teams. and he talks a lot about interdisciplinary teams and breaking down silos. Part of the dilemma of a position is, how do you influence all the other parts of the organization? Well, if you're just in sustainability, how are you going to get people to listen to you on facilities, on teaching and learning? That's been David's challenge up in Monterey. Like, it took him years to get the ear of the facility side because he came from the teaching side. Again, my first cut at this was actually a team structure, but I heard the push for a position, so we have a job description. That could be a person, but there's a lot of merit to a team approach that it could net out to 1.0 FTE by next year. It could. I would say give us a chance to think about it and post and hire maybe for, okay, I would love to have a CTE construction person as part of this, but I need somebody who can run spreadsheets. I need somebody who's good with data. And then maybe somebody who can actually start thinking about the teaching and learning side. So, you know, part of it is we get hung up on a position sometimes and a person. Sometimes it can be multiple people in part-time roles fulfilling a team. And we might get some synergy that we wouldn't get with just one person trying to solve everything in that job description.
Ms. Munoz?
Yes, I know when the topic of, sustainability was brought up by Ms. Capps, I was concerned about like the other priorities and so forth. But the more I thought about it, after speaking with Mr. Matsuoka when he went up to Monterey, I got excited about it. And I know that we could implement it. And that if we plan it properly, it can be, successful. And, as you said, involving others in the team. I just think that I value, I just want to say, like, I value your courage in bringing this up and also the work of the committee. And I believe in that vision that we can make it happen. If we do this properly, if we do it, and we'll learn from the first having this person, hopefully this ideal person who will have time and work with the team, and then learn from that and then increase the hours to an FTE.
Ms. Ford?
Thanks. I totally honor the difficulty that you foresee in terms of possibly not finding a good candidate or having some sort of a domino effect on the difficulty of hiring. But I'm wondering, just because I've learned over the years that there's just you have to capitalize on experience, but crystal balling doesn't always work. And I'm wondering if you just open the position and see what applications come in. And there may be something that is someone that is very exciting, or it may be people who are in part-time positions that they're not ready to leave. I just think I'd like to believe that the potential for it to be full-time would work out, and that you could, by putting it on EdJoin, just see what you get, rather than deciding that it's impossible to do this right away. I understand everything is hard to fill these days, but I just love to see who's interested in this job and if there's someone who could do it full-time.
Yeah, Board, we're getting into the execution of this, into the how.
Well, you asked us, please, I feel like you're scolding me, and it's an agenda item for discussion.
And I've stated my reasons why I think posting it as a full-time just to see. Again, I'm going to repeat then what the constraints are. I can't predict who's going to apply.
Right.
I'm not going to screen out people who would be hard to backfill. So here's my dilemma. It's like, I'm designing a process that's going to create a second-tier problem. And maybe, but I could solve it another way too, with a combination of part-time people that doesn't create that domino effect and might create a synergy of team that could be even better. Could be.
Right.
So who makes the decision about process?
I think
you do.
Yeah, the superintendent
You
makes
do,
that process.
But asked us for feedback, right?
I've heard it, and I'm
Okay.
giving you my responses back. But I asked that question. It's a really important question. Who's in charge of the process? The answer is supposed to be me, because that's what you hire a superintendent for. So you can give me your input. I'm allowed to push back. I'm sorry if it comes across as scolding. All right, but
But it does.
okay, well, I'm sorry that it does.
I appreciate the difficulty of this conversation, and I'm just trying to get some balance here in terms of what's wrong if we wait and give our instructional team the time it needs to come back with the best product that we have. It does not mean that we're any less committed to this issue. I'm not seeing that. So I'm just trying to, again, my practicality in terms of that coming forth. I don't see anyone saying, I don't hear anyone saying that we're not committed to this issue. What I'm seeing, it may be not in the form we want it to, in the timing that we want it to, but I see very good effort here on this side to really look at it in a more mindful way, in a more total way. Because what concerns me about this is that we're so, at this point, singularly focused on this. It concerns me that the issues that you put up, if you were to scroll down, Brian, in terms of all the other priorities that are there, that what are we looking at here? How does that do that? But they're not anywhere in this discussion. I'm just saying, why don't we just, what's wrong with us taking a pause in terms of giving that, Mr. Matsuoka, his duty is to do that in terms of that, to come back and give us recommendations. I don't see the pause or giving more time to look at it, saying that we're any less committed to that.
Well, certainly it's his prerogative as the superintendent to implement this the way that he judges is the best way, and there is no action to dispute that. So I do see a good correlation, and I'm glad that these are listed, because again, I just want to state, and I've already done the research and I presented that, and you all heard me, but this position will help allow more funding for these. That's the difference. That's the difference, and that's some of the urgency, is that we're wasting some money. No one's intent. It's just a natural when you don't, when in your house, if you have leaky roofs, you're wasting money, you're wasting resources. So I was really appreciative that you actually showed all these other priorities, because I just see such a direct connection between this position and more of an emphasis on sustainability as a way to pay for the things that we would love to be doing that we're not doing. Just my other point is, because we do have finally a wonderful new public information officer. I was glad that Dr. Reed brought up ethnic studies. Similarly to ethnic studies, there is a strong community support for our schools to be more sustainable. And so I'm just hoping that because of this, I don't want to characterize it negatively, but because of this change in approach, that gets communicated well. Unlike ethnic studies, that community was brought along and actually wanted the pause. This community has yet to hear about it, and so I hope that we can just talk a little bit more.
I beg to differ on the community wanting the pause. They did not want the pause. It really it was a very difficult conversation of many over conversations. They came to a compromise.
Sorry, I was still talking.
Yes, I know, but I just wanted to say that part. So didn't mean to interrupt you, Ms. Capps. So just needed to make that correction. So.
But they understood when it was presented at the board. So but I'll rephrase that just more generally, that again, Santa Barbarans really care about environmental. It's been a source of frustration, not directed at any current members of the team here, but previous ones, that we are where we are in sustainability. And so I hope that this, because I am hearing such strong commitment, which is always good to be reassured of that is also then conveyed outside of this room, that this position still reflects, even at a part-time listing, a strong commitment to sustainability. Thank you.
Dr. Reed?
What I wanted to ask is, Mr. Matsuoka, how, if you were to think about it as a team approach, and I'm not asking you to discuss what that would look like, but it sounds like you feel like that might be an approach to take that would be a more comprehensive undertaking from a variety of staff that could do that, or educators or TOSAs. So perhaps there might be another report reflecting back on, an opportunity to see what that might look like, as opposed to just saying we're just going to go part-time or we're going to hire, we want to go full-time. But maybe if we could see or understand how that might even be a better approach or a more creative approach to get us off the ground. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to take back from this conversation is how do we build the right team structure with aptitudes and skills to do that job description that's really broad and big. Off the top of my head, Mr. Vizzolini and I have already talked about, well, it'd be great to have somebody who understands construction, who can think about, buildings and efficiencies. I need somebody who understands data and can work with databases and manipulate that and visualize it, because pictures are storytellers. And, so I think those are two that come off the top of my head. I'd have to think about, what other, I don't want a team of 5, but I think a team of 2 or 3 could be a really good approach. And we may get to a 1.0 FTE.
So perhaps that might be something to consider then, in terms of, it could be 3 people doing a 1.0. When would you think that you would roll that out?
I'm going to go on vacation.
All right, well, I'm just saying, if we can be creative about thinking how we might do this to ensure that we do move forward, I want you to go on vacation. I also want to respect the how, and I want to exactly say again, that is not my job. And I really feel that I can get in the weeds and do that, and I've done that in other places, and I've been told what I need to step back. So I do, and I respect your judgment on the best way to do this. So I guess, and I also respect your opinion on what, and I respect the community who also wants this to happen, and this committee that's been so involved. I know how it feels to be passionate about something and want it to happen. I want all of those things to happen, quite frankly, and I want them to happen yesterday, but, So I guess I would like to make a direction that maybe you would consider thinking about that as a group. I don't know. I guess as a board, we have to make a decision what direction we would like to provide. Ms. Sinsmo?
I think we pretty much gave him quite a few directions here, and so he needs to be able to collect them in terms of that and come back with what he's heard from us tonight. So there's not, I think we've had a good discussion on this, but I think there's a lot of things that Mr. Matsuoka needs to do and bring back to us, and what you took out of that in terms of that. That was my thought on that. So is there any further comments or in discussion? So just for time, place, are we looking at number 2? Are we waiting on the first?
Let's wait for Dr. Becchio to be here. He was the creator of that. That's a new board policy about, what was the title?
The fraternization policy.
Yeah. And so I think we took some of your input, and it's 10:30, so.
It's, Ms. Ford, I see your face. I want to recognize that face.
I would love for us then to make a commitment to vote on it in July.
Okay, so there's an important step that we need to do, because this is a new policy.
Right.
We need to work with our unions about this policy. All right, and that's per legal counsel. So this document's got some very new language. I think it's very current language. But our attorneys have said, please, you've got to consult with our unions. You could do a preliminary approval of it, but know that it still needs to be reviewed with our union leadership. So,
Informally, colleagues, would you be willing to do an approval in July?
Yeah, I think we can look at it and discuss. Ms. Notes? Yeah. Did you have?
I think we could wait, but that's, what the board thinks.
In terms of doing a preliminary approval in July? We'll still have a presentation from Dr. Becchio at that point, right?
yeah,
Or is there-
to make this a voted on policy, we really need to get with our unions first before I ask you to take a vote. Because for you to vote and say this is now HR policy without consulting would be out of order. So if you do a first reading on July 23rd, you could give us pre-approval on August, I think it's 11th, pending consultation with our unions, and then it would be in place by early August.
Dr. Reed?
Can you consult with the unions before the July 23rd, so that we don't have to?
Our unions are
on
Vacation.
They're not here.
Okay, so that sounds like, is that a good process in terms of meeting your needs, or?
Maybe
Ms. Ford?
could I just have a little bit more information about how it would work for the unions?
We need to sit down and review the language just to make sure that there's not something in there that they just find, I don't know, too aggressive or too controversial. I mean, I think it's fine. I mean, but, you know, I'm a superintendent. I think our unions will look at it from their lens. And so, you know, our unions work really well with us. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but it's a process and a step we need to do.
Okay, so as we move down the agenda, any coming events that anyone would like to let us know, other than vacation for this very overworked staff? All of us need this break. Any future agenda items? Okay, Ms. Capps.
Yeah, I wanted to raise one as a possibility. So I've been, it's been brought to my attention what's happening in Carpinteria Unified School District with cannabis farms growing up right around, literally, this is Carpinteria High School. I can pass this out. I got only a few of them, but there's cannabis farms across the street, and that community is dealing with a lot. And so I actually looked up, there's one about a little over half a mile from Dos Pueblos High School. And there's a potential for one to be someday right across the street from San Marcos. So I know this is a big problem, probably a new topic because it's a new law, but I think we should consider some sort of ordinance at some, or policy at some stage about proximity of cannabis near our schools. I think it's probably mostly an impact of our schools in Goleta, but Goleta, Dos Pueblos probably being the one, because it's really, the state law is really deferring to local authorities and a school district. I think things would be a lot different in Carpinteria if they had known to pass something to prohibit what's happening there. So I wanted to flag that. I don't know who that might be directed towards in terms of staff, but I think it's
So
something
you're asking it to come back as a report, or what are you asking for it to do?
I defer to, I mean, I'm raising it as a topic that I think we should be concerned about, given the proliferation of cannabis in California and especially in this county.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of putting it out there. I'm willing to do research or be of help in any regard, but I think it's something that we shouldn't ignore because it's a kind of a fast rolling train.
Is that going to be more of a, if we were to get collaboration with other agencies, would that be more county?
Well, the county is allowed, yeah, I mean, the county is allowed for it to be, for cannabis cultivation to be 700 feet, 750 feet, which is quite close. Wow. Yeah, it's like 2 football fields. So we would have to supersede that. Okay. And they would defer to, if we can get ahead of it, that's what I'm asking for, is that I believe, in my opinion, that is too lax. And what I've heard from a lot of concerned people around Carpinteria High School is that they wish that they had created some sort of policy to prohibit this from happening. And they were caught off guard.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So just on a point about Carpinteria, has the Unified School District there approached this, or do you know anything about how they're working on it? The district there, the school district there? Are they working on the same type of?
I don't know specifically their actions, but
Okay.
I know that it's a big concern. And New York Times had an article about respiratory issues. They literally have to air out the classrooms every morning at Carpinteria High before kids can come in. Yeah. So I don't know if it's a form of a resolution, even if it's a general resolution, maybe similar to a climate one that we just want to make sure that we're consulted with or something like that. Again, I don't want us to get caught flat-footed. Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Ford?
In the spirit of sort of closing the loop, really one of the hardest things for us to do as educators sometimes, I'd love to bring GATE back, some kind of a review of GATE, the data that we have asked for, and also plans going forward, the possible task force, et cetera. I think we left a lot of things not tied up.
The task force on GATE, is that what you're saying?
Well, I think there was discussion about the possibility of
Okay.
that, but
Just wanna make
in
sure.
general, just want to come back for where we're going with GATE next year.
Okay. And also, Ms. Wagner, Dr. Wagner, we were going to talk about the e-cigarettes or the Juul products that's going on with our students. I know you were saying with the safety task force, you might be bringing a report back in September. Is that still on task for do that?
For fall.
For fall, okay. All right.
September, we'll shoot for September.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, it's been a rough few months, too many to name at this point. However, we will adjourn to July 23rd. Wish everybody some great rest and relaxation. We're going to need it because we're going to have work to do when we get back. So good to see you. Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you, board, as well. So we are adjourned.